tests. We will have buses available to take them in town. It will be across Serena Hotel, for those who have an idea. If not, our protocol team will make sure to guide you. We have a venue in front of Serena Hotel, and right next to Serena Hotel in the tents, you will be privileged to actually go through right away without having to make a queue. It will be between 5 and 6 p.m. if you want that privilege. In the meantime, we have a coffee break at 11, so this panel will take about an hour and 10 minutes. Now I'll pass the microphone along to the moderator of the next panel, which is Improve Value Addition and Promote Domestic Consumption of African Coffee. And I invite Dr. Maurice Akiri, Regional Director of CABI Africa in Kenya, to please step forward and moderate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Minister, thank you for giving us such a good experience. And with all protocol observed, I'm going to invite the panelists to come forward. I'll start with Ms. Raisa. Then we'd call Dr. Fred Karuma. Then Mr. Amir. And Mr. Matit. Okay, I think whoever is coming is a different person. Representing this, Marcus. Let's welcome Marcus, please. So yesterday we talked a lot, and we were told about how to get what we need to do to be able to improve our coffee consumption. I think the team here is going to tell us more a bit on how to do it. We were told what to do, but how to do it now is going to be our challenge. And as the Honorable Minister just stated, the social aspects of coffee is something that comes into play. We know, obviously, coffee origin is in Africa, but consumption is very low within African countries. I think in some of our traditional cultures in Africa, we recall, for some of us in the olden days, family makes food for the guests, and guests eat the best food. Children are told to wait. So maybe that's what we're also doing with coffee. So we need today to agree on something and reverse the same. So starting with the first panelist, Ms. Raisa, I'm just going to talk a bit about her. She has been a key advocate and a lead marketer for Rwandan specialty coffee in China. She has worked with big coffee influencers, such as Chinese master barista champion Yuan Yi and Zhang Wantao to promote Rwanda specialty coffee and increase awareness of the Chinese market. So she's here going to tell us. She currently serves as the CEO of Inno Coffee Series, a drip coffee company that she founded with a sole purpose to raise awareness of Rwandan coffee specialty locally and abroad and boost its consumption. So please welcome Ms. Raisa to tell us a bit about how you are seeing the experience out there. How do we bring it back to the continent and get our people consume coffee? Thank you.
Thank you so much. As you heard, my name is Reisa Ikuzwe, and I'm very honored to be here. I'm going to give you a short presentation. I'm going to talk about our market here in Africa for a few minutes first. What I want to say first, I want to highlight what our focus has been in Africa when it comes to coffee. As you might know, the marketing strategies of most African countries, producing countries, has solely focused on export. And with the ongoing issues with climate change, quantity fluctuations, and other factors, the coffee export price has been very sensitive to price volatility. The reality is coffee producers invest too much of their resources and effort in hopes that the next global market price will be worthy of the effort. And when they're faced with uncertain prices, especially prices that do not cover production costs, they minimize efforts, they reduce investments, and cut back primarily on labor, creating a downward spiral of poor production and low income, and the people that suffer the most are farm workers. So this is to show you how price volatility in the export market impacts the coffee sector and exposes coffee producers to unnecessary risks. Therefore, it is vital to commit to strategies that enable African coffee producers to obtain a higher and better share of the consumer price. In order to do this, it is critical to shift our focus on value addition and domestic consumption of African coffee. On top of the export money stream, believe me, there is a big untouched market for coffee in our region that needs to be fully explored. Therefore, it is vital to commit to strategies that enable African coffee producers to obtain a higher and better share of the consumer price. In order to do this, let's talk about what we actually need to do. It is also critical to shift our focus on value addition and domestic consumption of African coffee. Now, how can we improve the domestic consumption? What should we do? And so that we can capture a larger share of the total value of coffee that we produce. What I want to talk about first is raising awareness. We need to raise awareness and let more people know about coffee. Understanding and also understanding first what's keeping the local population from drinking locally produced coffee is the first step towards increasing the domestic demand. So I think a lack of consumer knowledge is one of the barriers that we're faced with. As a Rwandese born and raised, I've personally met so many people in Rwanda with no knowledge whatsoever about coffee. Even me personally, like the Minister of State talked about, I was also exposed to coffee when I traveled abroad. And also when I was growing up, I only thought that coffee would cause me heart problems. And for a long time, my knowledge of coffee was solely based on the wrong information. And then when I was exposed to coffee, I did not only find out that coffee can give you increased brain power, it's healthy, it has healthy attributes, and it's enjoyable. So I want people out there to know that coffee is a beverage that not only boosts your energy, it's delicious and it's good for you. So it's a 3-in-1. Now, how many other misinformed people are there who could be potential coffee consumers, but they aren't because of misinformation? There are myths and misconceptions about coffee. It is important that we first implement strategies with a focus to educate and raise awareness of coffee. This can be done through collaborations with other institutions, such as local medias, to stimulate information sharing and campaigns to position coffee as a vital drink. as well as sharing the benefits of coffee. Again, as the Minister of State said, coffee is not just a drink. It is a means of social interaction, and it has been for a long time. I mean, we've heard coffee and friends, coffee and work, coffee break, or let's grab a cup of coffee. We need an expansion of coffee culture on our continent, especially among the younger generations. I'm talking about millennials and Generation Z. Not to state the obvious, but this demographic group is the future of Africa. And if we're successful in influencing them to adopt a coffee culture, the domestic consumption will drastically increase, not only for the present, but also for future generations to follow. Now, how can we win this young demographic over to consume more coffee? This is a generation that is driven by a fear of missing out, known as FOMO. The coffee sector needs to tap into that and other different factors that influence their purchasing power. To state a few, we need a strong social media presence and keeping up with coffee trends and exploring new coffee processing and serving techniques. And I think this is important because I myself am a millennial, and believe me when I tell you this, if you want to win us over, give us trendy, give us convenient, give us unique experiences and great value. Which brings me to my next point of executing frequent studies that allow for the coffee sector in Africa to stay up to date with the newest trends in the coffee industry. Even though coffee is an old commodity, ways to consume has evolved and is always progressing. We need additional efforts in the coffee manufacturing sector. Investments should be made in training programs and knowledge development to create more professionals in the field. Because there are so many trends out there. When you travel, when you follow coffee, there are so many trends, there are new ways of consuming coffee that we need to tap into and make it accessible to our population. And financial structures, I want to also talk about what we need from our governments. Financial structures from governments such as incentives, including favorable tax treatment and better access to loans, are vital to support domestic SMEs like my company that are seeking to add value and helping to shape innovation in the coffee sector. And also we need policies to discourage the import of coffee products. And also, so we can shift our focus to local produced coffee products. As I conclude, I would like to encourage big organizations, institutions, to please use local coffee products. Hotels, airlines, support local products. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That is very key. I think you've touched on awareness, which is critical to local consumption, value addition, and coming up with various varieties to attract the youth and the millennials is critical in what we're doing. Again, one thing that comes from your presentation is the fact that our industry should be able to promote local coffee products, the hotels, schools, and everything that we're doing, so that at least we create awareness and expand the knowledge of what coffee brings to us. So thank you very much. Our next speaker is going to be Dr. Karuma, who actually needs no introduction. Dr. Karuma is an experienced executive, a diplomat, academic, consultant, trainer, and coffee professional with a strong focus on strategic design, institutional development, business development, marketing, partnership development, and management. Is a champion of coffee improvement systems, right from production through to value chain to the consumer. We all know Dr. Karuma is a life member of AFCA, having started AFCA early in the years in the role in formation and establishment of Africa Fine Coffee Associations. Recently, after leaving IACO leadership, he was appointed African Coffee Ambassador by the IACO General Assembly in November 2020. Dr. Karuma is going to take us through some of the key aspects and the key steps that we need on a policy angle and the roles from the different players to be able to see how we can influence policy within our government systems, how each player can contribute towards the awareness creation and make the systems easier for our local consumption and value addition. Welcome, Dr. Karuma.
Thank you, Dr. Kiri. I would like to thank the Honorable Minister of State, Dr. Ngabitsinze. I think that was a very good introduction for us. You mentioned something very interesting about coffee and health, and how your driver said that he fears to fall sick drinking coffee. Many times I tell people that they should go and visit Ethiopia and find out from the Ethiopians, how come the Ethiopians, the population of Ethiopia has kept growing. Now there are over 100 million people in Ethiopia, and they drink coffee, a lot of coffee, every day they drink coffee. So the population growth is not hindered by people drinking coffee. Maybe it is even enhanced, you never know. Health, you can't say the Ethiopians are unhealthy because they drink a lot of coffee. No, coffee is good for us. And I think we need to encourage ourselves to enjoy the coffee. Sorry, I use that one. In looking at coffee in Africa, from my experience, having worked in the public sector and also in the private sector, I know that policy is very critical. As the previous speaker has told us, the role of the government is very critical in terms of issues to do with the financing and other aspects of policy to support the industry. So government action and expenditure, we know, as the Honorable Minister would confirm to us, that government cannot spend money unless there's a certain framework, a policy framework, that becomes the basis for government action and government expenditure. So if we want our government to support the coffee industry in every way, we must make sure that there's a policy framework. The policy framework is critical. And it is important for us, for our countries, to have a comprehensive coffee policy, which must specifically include the promotion of the transformation of the value chain. So it's not just promoting production, increasing production, no, increasing productivity. Yeah, I mean, all this is good, but we must have a comprehensive policy that looks at from research right up to the consumption. And as the previous presenter said, we should even discourage the importation of those finished products which are coming to upset our local market. Of course, we know our friends from Nigeria. Nigeria is a big market, about 200-something million, and Nigeria imports most of its coffee from everywhere in the world, but not even Africa. So in our countries, we need to have a policy that will encourage the development of the local value chain, which will include the roasting, the packaging, and the supporting of the development of the retail, coffee retail outlets. In Uganda, and I'll talk about that experience, that Uganda, with the support of USAID, there was a USAID project that worked on the development of a coffee policy, and this coffee policy was later on presented to, the draft was presented to cabinet. Cabinet in Anglophone, we call it cabinet. In Francophone, it is called the Council of Ministers. It is the same thing. The Council of Ministers, in Anglophone, it is the cabinet. So this was presented, and the government adopted what is called the National Coffee Policy of 2013. In fact, before I went to IACO, I had been asked to be part of that team in developing this policy, and I said, I can't, I'm leaving the country. But we had a competent team of experts who continued with that, and we developed that policy. So the policy is important. We must have a policy in place. And after the policy, just having a policy is not enough. You must have a strategy. The strategy is critical. So after the policy in Uganda was passed, it was followed by the development of a national coffee strategy. As I said, the policy was passed in 2013, and then the process of developing the strategy started, and by the end of 2014, the new strategy was in place, covering 2015 to 2020. And it had 4 pillars. One is production and productivity, and second was value addition and quality. So you see, as part of this strategy, value addition and quality were key pillars. So when we are looking at promoting consumption and so on in our countries, we must have it as part of the strategy. So this is included there. Then there was market development and intelligence, and then institutional development and accountability. And right now, Uganda is in the process of finalizing a new strategy, which is covering the next 5-year period. And again, value addition and the promotion of domestic consumption are very, very high on that agenda. Now, you can have the policy, you can have the strategy. After that, you need to make sure that you have a good legal framework, because all these things need to be implemented in a framework that supports what you have set out to do. So many times in our countries, we may have some laws which are outdated. Like, in Kenya, I remember there's a time when we had laws that could not even allow a farmer to uproot a coffee tree. So even a coffee tree which has become unproductive, you are not allowed to do anything to it, because it was a colonial, legacy. But, we need to update our systems, our legal systems. So all these aspects which have been overtaken by events and new developments have to be addressed, so you remove all the discrepancies. So now in the case of Uganda, the new coffee policy sparked a process of drafting a new coffee law. The coffee law, what was then known as the National Coffee Bill, was presented in Parliament in 2018, and Parliament approved that law in 2020. And in August this year, it was assented to by the President to become the National Coffee Act of 2021, which replaced the UCDA statute of 1991. I was very much involved in the Statute of 1991 because I was part of that process of the development of the drafting and so on of the UCDA bill of 1991. I was not involved in the National Coffee Bill, which has now been passed, because I was out of the country. I was not involved in that process. But what I know is that the new law is more comprehensive. It's addressing all the issues from research, production, all the value chain up to consumption. And it has sparked a lot of debate already. And people are calling me to ask me, what is your opinion about this new Coffee Act? And I tell them, when an act is passed by Parliament, if there are any issues that come up, there's always room for discussion. You can have engagement, and if there are areas to be modified, you can still modify them. So this leads us to another process of engagement, which is partnerships between the public sector and the private sector, and this is very critical. Now, we have the roles of the government entities, and in the new Coffee Act that Uganda has put in place, there is a provision for training. We have issues of monitoring and compliance with regulations. And one of the things that I say is that there must be carrots rather than the stick. If you put a law in place and all you are thinking is how to catch people and penalize them, it doesn't help you. So you need to have incentives. As the speaker said before, incentives are very critical. So have incentives to encourage people to do the right thing. And then they need to provide technical assistance. The government can provide technical assistance, but also the government, because of having the framework, it will encourage partners, development partners, and all other partners to come in and support that process. And then there's also the area of exploring opportunities and dissemination of information. And these government agencies really should play a critical role in providing information. At IACO, we have been talking to all our members, encouraging them to have good data, good information systems. And yesterday in the marketing committee, promotion and marketing, we agreed that let us have a link to all the websites of the member states so that that information is linked, and then we can have people getting access to the relevant information, which is very critical. And then also the other thing is the government entities should serve as arbiters in the resolution of conflicts. And this thing has been highlighted in the new Coffee Act in Uganda. And it's something that we need to do in all our countries to make sure that, so like now, NAEB here, if there's a conflict in the industry, you expect that NAEB will help in trying to resolve any issues that come up. Before you go going to court should be a last option, but courts waste so much time. So we should have a system within our frameworks which encourages quick resolution of disputes and doesn't waste people's time. So all these things can help us to promote our industry. So as I mentioned, public-private partnerships are critical. And I'll talk of the case of the National Coffee Platform. We have these coffee platforms. We have in Kenya, we have in Tanzania, we have in Uganda. There's a public-private partnership platform in Côte d'Ivoire, Cameroon, and Rwanda, by the way, was one of the first. It was not called that way, but I remember when I came to Rwanda like 20 years ago, as we were setting up AFCA in the region, there was that partnership that was going, that discussion that was going on. And in fact, you had the washing stations that were being established. The community would contribute 30%. 1/3 would come from the community, 1/3 the government, and 1/3 from the development partners. So you find the cooperatives during that time were being set up, and the cooperatives owned the project that was being developed. It was a very good model. So we need to encourage this kind of thing. So traditionally, there's been a tendency of suspicion between government agencies and the private sector. There's always been suspicion. And we have to find a way of reducing this gap so that there's more trust between the partners. Because the public sector and private sector should be partners. So in Uganda, there was the establishment of the National Coffee Platform, which started in 2006. That process started then. And right now, it has really grown. It's a very strong partnership between government and the private sector. And it discusses all issues across the value chain. And now we have seen that in that framework, there's been a significant increase in domestic coffee consumption in Uganda. But again, it's not Uganda only. If you look at East Africa, let's leave our brothers and sisters of Ethiopia, they're in a league of their own. But even the rest of us, you come to Rwanda, 20 years ago, there was only one cafe somewhere, which, you could all, if you wanted coffee. But now, everywhere. Dar es Salaam, it is just full of cafes. You go to Nairobi, you go to Kampala, I mean, everywhere, there are so many cafes. And I've been in Abidjan, and in Abidjan also now you find cafes are everywhere. In Yaoundé, everywhere. This is on the increase, but what we need to make sure is that we have the right policies in place and a framework that will encourage the quick resolution of issues when they arise. Recently, I visited a cafe, and I just have it in pictures, just showing what that was. Very interesting concept. And this is not limited to what I saw in this cafe. It is everywhere. I mean, I've visited cafes everywhere in different cities in Africa. And I was very impressed by this thing. And I thought it is a good idea just to show you how these people do it. We need to encourage more of this across our African countries, East Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, North Africa, and so on. Because if we want to encourage domestic consumption, people must come to an environment that is attractive. As the Honorable Minister has said, you tell somebody, let's go for coffee. Even if they don't drink coffee, the aroma of coffee might convince them to start drinking. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Fred. I think you've touched on the policy framework that is required to promote domestic consumption, but most importantly, every player is key to doing it, and every player needs to intervene at the right time. So partnerships are critical, and beyond that, we need to communicate. There has to be a communication linkage between amongst all the players for us to promote coffee consumption. Our next speaker is going to be Amir Hamza, who is also well known to us. Mr. Hamza is the current chair and CEO of Amir Hamza Tanzania Limited, which he owns with his family. He has a lot of experience in coffee industry that extends to more than 40 years now, and has developed that and has the commitment to continue developing the same. The company has the largest state-of-the-art spray-dried instant coffee factory in East and Central Africa, and is involved in trading green coffee beans. He's also the chairman of Tanzania Coffee Association, and also the current chair of Africa Fine Coffee Association, AFCA. Mr. Hamza has also been involved in various conferences, giving a lot of talks and exhibitions. And so Mr. Hamza is here to talk to us today, how his company has managed to promote value addition and domestic consumption, and also just to highlight a bit, in the midst of COVID pandemic, how has that disruption affected domestic consumption, and how are we looking toward building the same moving forward? So please allow me to welcome Mr. Hamza to talk to us.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Amir Hamza, as our moderator said, and I come from private sector, and I've been in coffee industry for past 40 years, 29 years officially, from 1994 when the government of Tanzania allowed private sector to participate in coffee industry. Before that, we had been having cooperative unions and foreign buyers directly. First of all, I would like to thank our Honorable Minister, because I never expected to have our politician with that deep knowledge of coffee. And today when I heard him saying those words from his heart, I believe now we got the leaders who are really true coffee people, and they understand, they know what is coffee. I'll start my presentation. I've got a presentation which will be divided in two parts. One will be value addition, and another part will be coffee consumption. May I request my presentation to be, this is the picture of our instant coffee factory, spray-dried instant coffee factory, which is in Bukoba. We are on shores of Lake Victoria. We are 80 kilometers of southern border of Uganda on the southern side. And our position is very beautiful, the scenery is good, and we still have room for expansion. And we have built the largest spray-dried instant coffee powder plant in Eastern Central Africa, and you can know that in all of African continent, there are only 7 plants of this type. Improving on value addition. Value addition will not be done just by pushing somebody to do value addition. But value addition will be done, it will be like when you find that trade is demanding for value addition, that's when you will do. Today the world is opening up. We got the economic partnership agreements, we got African Continental Free Trade Area, we got AGOA, we got Silk and Road Network coming in from other parts of the world. And you see the world is all trying to have a free trade agreement everywhere. And with these trade agreements, we cannot block coffees coming from outside our continent. But let's look at our continent. Africa produces 10% of the total world coffee production. That is on plus minus. We go to 12%, we go down to 8-9%. But we are producing about 10% of the total world coffee production. And we nearly export 95% of our coffees in green form, that is in raw form. We export it into the other parts of the world. And then Africa imports more than 20% in form of value-added coffee. We don't have the solid figures because those countries importing coffees, we don't get exact figures. Even IACO, I doubt if they've got accurate figures, but approximately we are importing more than 20%. And the countries which consume coffee, if you leave Ethiopia, which is #1 in coffee consumption, but you find there are other countries in Africa which don't produce coffee, but they consume a lot of coffee. Africa has potential to produce higher quantity and quality of coffee due to availability of land, labor, and water. In other parts of the world, they've exhausted their production capacities. But in Africa, we still have areas to produce more coffee. And once we do more production, we can be leading in consuming also. Once the coffee is produced more and quality will be better, there will be competition, we'll be having better qualities of coffees, and we'll be consuming it in one way or another. In a way, to value addition at origin will help to empower coffee farmers and improve their livelihoods. When we do innovative value addition at origin, we take our own coffees, we process them, and we have the end cup of coffee for the end consumer, I mean for the consumer to use. You find when you go to the market within your local area, it empowers the coffee farmers more than just exporting green coffee beans. Need of modern technology with equipment to improve value addition and trendy packaging is very important. If we look at our packaging done locally in Africa for our coffees which have been roasted, ground, or produced in instant form, versus the packaging of the coffees coming from outside Africa, versus those coffee packaging which when you go to any European supermarket and when you look at the coffee shelf and you like to grab some coffee, you look at the packaging. That's the first thing which person looks at. So we need to improve our packaging. Second slide, please. Up. Value addition has to match requirements of consumers, because when you do value addition, if your consumers are not taken into consideration, you do value addition for a product which is not desired by your consumers, then you fail. Different geographical locations, cultures, economical status, different geographical locations, cultures, economical status, and age groups have different requirements of coffee consumptions. You can see from the pictures there, we got Kamwani. That is our local traditional coffee in Kagera region of Tanzania. The traditional people, when they produce this Kamwani, this is offered to the guests coming into the house, and this is usually produced from green coffee beans which are not mature enough, and they are boiled with certain aromatic grasses, and then they are packed in banana skin. We call it Kamwani, and it is offered in a bowl of grass made from grass, and it is offered to the guest, and the guest has to clean his hands using the dry grass which is given to him. This is one way of consumption according to the culture. And then you go to the economic status of the community there. You can find people going for value-added products like instant coffees, 3-in-1, etc. Our company has also done, you can see Cafe Hamza there. That is another type of coffee which is on the shelves or which is there. So it depends on the desire, or it depends on the demand of the consumer, what he wants. Also, there is need for affordable funding. The biggest challenge to the African coffee value adders or industries doing value addition in Africa is affordable funding. Our friends or companies coming in from outside Africa, they've got fundings of 2% per annum. They've got very encouraging funding for doing value additions. You find companies in Germany, in France, in the European Union, with instant coffee factories, with freeze-dried factories, and you look at the terms and conditions from the governments, you find a company which is setting up a factory for instant coffee is given 50% grant money or 60% grant money. He's given a loan at 2% for a period of 25 years with up to 5 years of grace period. Now, when you have that type of funding or finance, what do you expect for a local coffee value addition company in Africa? How can he compete with the foreign companies coming from those type of areas? They will take your raw coffees, do the value addition in their countries, and bring it back to African continent. I'm not against those companies, I'm not against those governments, but African governments also need to look at the policies and incentives which we give to our value adders of our products of coffee. Next slide, please. Promoting domestic consumption of coffee. Increasing internal consumption is a booster for benefiting the entire supply chain from farmer to producer, security of price volatility, especially against low prices, and also internal demand for coffee provides producers more financial stability. With African population of 1.2 billion. Now the African Continental Free Trade Area, we got agreement to move our goods freely into all 52, 54 countries, and we've got 1.2 billion population. With this type of an opportunity, and if we do value addition, our farmers will really be safeguarded against the price volatility of the world market. And sometimes when you find this price volatility, it is not just because of demand and supply, it is also because of companies joining together. You find companies buying over another company and forming some sort of union, and then you find at the International Commodity Exchange, you find the speculators are doing their job of raising the price or lowering the price. So it's just not the demand and supply. In this type of world, you really need a good security for the farmer. And the best security is value addition and increasing the local consumption. We need to change the habits towards coffee drinking to increase domestic consumption by promoting coffee products. As other speakers said, even Honorable Minister said, regarding the health benefits of drinking coffee, we need to explain, to educate our people that coffee drinking is a good thing. When you use coffee, it will help you in certain ways in your life. We were even having an ad in our country during those days of when AIDS was blown up. We had a billboard saying, "Usione so, ongea naye," that is, don't feel shy, talk to her. But now we need to have a billboard saying, don't feel shy, invite for coffee. We should invite our friends, our business people, business community, our leaders over coffee. Conducting awareness campaign among young people, schools, universities at Z, Gen, and millennials prefer modern, stylish coffee. You can see down there in those pictures, on one side we got a street vendor giving us the coffee. Pouring the coffee into a cup of coffee, and on another side you got the modern coffee shops. You find today the modern coffee shops are mushrooming everywhere. They are coming up, even in Rwanda, even in Tanzania, and you find young generation preferring to go to those modern coffee shops rather than drinking coffees on streets. Expansion of customer base, new products and services. We need to change our recipes of coffee or look into it more deeply and have energy drinks from coffee and have modern stylish coffee shops. 2 weeks ago I was in Algeria. I did not see any international coffee brand shops there like Starbucks or any other brand, but I saw the local Algerian coffee shops with Algerian name ending with Baks or something like that, but you find everything in a culture of Algerian way. So the coffee shops are mushrooming, and we need to be innovative in bringing up modern coffee shops. Publicity of health benefits, our friends, my colleagues, they have talked about it, so I don't need to talk more. Even our Honorable Minister talked about it. Next slide, please. We need to have eye-catcher advertisements. The way I said, usione so ongea naye, you need to have advertisements everywhere which will be pulling people or young generations towards coffee. Sustainable supply of quality and quantity. You need to have quality coffee, but there should be a sustainable supply. It's not that this season we got nice coffee of high percentage, high marks in coffee cupping, and next year you find because of season or something, that coffee is not available. So we need to have a sustainable supply of quality and quantity, and we need to build consumer trust that our coffees, which we are producing locally, they are very, very hygienic and they are proper, and consumer should trust that brand of coffee. We need to build trusted African brands. Today in Africa, how many brands do we have? We got international brands. We've got so many international brands selling into African continent. But how many local brands are selling into the African countries, within African countries, regarding the coffees which we say this brand is now coming from Rwanda, this is coming from Tanzania, etc. Also, we need to have certification and standardization of our products, of our companies. Like my company has now been certified in ISO 22018, and that brings some sort of trust to the customer that this company is certified. And in today's population, young generation, they look for certification, standardized certification, hygienic certifications, etc. Different recipes, types of appetites of consumers with changing lifestyle and for different occasions, stress relievers, etc. When I visited in Malaysia, I found there were coffees for every occasion. You find coffees, pink coffees for our ladies. You find sports youngsters, or somebody who wants to go to play sports, he's got that type of coffee. Somebody going to do studies, he's got that type of coffee. So they've got different type and varieties of coffee. The same coffee has got some different ingredients inside. The recipes have been changed. Building the capacity of our cuppers and baristas. You can see down there in the picture, we got the local coffee being poured in an Arabic way, in a Swahili way. Even in the coast regions of East Africa, we use this. But on the other side, you've got our baristas and cuppers pouring coffee to test them. We need to increase the capacity of our baristas, our liquorers, our cuppers, and also at the same time, the brewing machinery for brewing the better quality of coffee. Next, please. Thus, my company, Amir Hamza, has built one of the largest modern state-of-art instant coffee factory, and it was not an easy task to put that type of investment in the African continent, especially in our country or whichever country you are putting in Africa, with changing policies, changing governments, not having security of investments, etc. It was a big step, but we as Tanzanians, we took the step and we said, this is our country, this is our motherland, Africa is a motherland, and we want to do value addition of our coffees and give the world coffee which is already value added. And in doing so, we also have wide value addition of coffee products. We now have 13 products coming from coffee. We got Amir Hamza Premium Instant Coffee, which is blend of instant coffee with 10% of roasted and ground coffees coming from best areas of Tanzania, like Southern Highlands in Mbeya, and also from Kilimanjaro and Kigoma. And then we got 3-in-1. Now we are going for 4-in-1 and 5-in-1 in near future. We got spiced coffee, we got instant ginger coffee, which is available instantly if you pour into water or hot water with milk. You can enjoy your ginger with coffee, everything together. So we got varieties of these coffee products, and you can see when you offer varieties to the consumers, that's when the consumers themselves will start consuming coffee. And this is the best way of increasing the local consumption of coffee. Next, please. In summary, value addition of coffee with appropriate funding should move the farmer from struggling for a living and income to a prosperous coffee farmer. Increasing domestic consumption provides the opportunity to cushion smallholder farmers against green coffee price volatility, and will lead to better retention of coffee incomes in the producing countries, resulting in job creation as well. Because when the value addition is done out of African continent, the 70, 80% or more than 80% of the coffee's value remain outside. As our Honorable Minister also told us, 1 cup of coffee costs how much in those countries compared to 1 kilo of how much a farmer is paid for. So our value addition is all going out of the continent. We need to retain it inside the continent. Amir Hamza Tanzania Limited, as a value adders, have the capacity and product innovation to sustain solid growth. We are positive about future of coffee in Africa. We will play our part. When you drink our coffee, Cafe Amir Hamza, we say that it's going to be a good day, made with love in Tanzania. I hope this presentation will be of value to other peoples who are intending to do value addition and increase the local coffee consumption. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hamza, for that reassurance and taking a bold step forward, which some of us can now get to emulate. And then for us to drink African coffee, build Africa, we have to start somewhere. And I like the fact that you're saying we need to start by empowering our farmers to increase their livelihoods and improve their livelihoods. And in so doing, we have to have instruments in place to facilitate the input supplies, cash financing, and all that, so that they can be able to give us a good production. Then the next step is we have to get the assurance and make our consumers feel comfortable with our products, all from how we produce it, how we package it, and most importantly, giving them varieties and options that they can choose from. So thank you very much for that. Last but not least, our next speaker is going to be Marcos R. Brandis. He has a short name, MRGB. He will tell us what RG is all about when he's talking. Marcos is a Brazilian entrepreneur in Eastern Africa with headquarters in Nairobi. His career started on the truck transport industry and machinery manufacturing before moving to Europe, Germany, and to Africa. He stayed in Angola largely, and is a marketing manager for a cargo airline during that time, before shifting gears. He was invited by the same airline to manage East African operations as regional manager, covering Kenya, Somalia, Sudan, and Rwanda. In that time, he opened his own business, Brazafrique Enterprise Limited, in 1996, an agribusiness company that has been in operation for the last 25 years with a regional presence that extends Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and DRC. Today, Brazafrique Enterprise is among the group of companies, BGC, with 10 companies as part of what is focusing on agribusiness, housing, and infrastructure. The career profile of MRGB can be deduced from the way he has developed BGC Group. It's focused on innovation, technology transfer, training, and belief in the Africa agribusiness successful future. So please welcome me to bring MRGB to tell us how all these innovations and technology transfer is going to help us pick on the value addition and consumption angle of our African coffee. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris. First of all, good morning to everybody, coffee authorities, ladies, gentlemen, coffee friends. And thank you to IACO to have invited us here to be with you today. Basically, as Dr. Morris said, my background is basically technology. That's what we are experts in East Africa. We are market leaders in the coffee sector. And a lot of the machines that you see around East and Central Africa, we supplied. But today I'm going to be talking about, being invited by IACO, about strategies, the future of coffee, domestic consumption in Africa. And I'm going to use a document, a presentation from one of the coffee experts in the world, Brazilian, called Carlos Brando. He is, I'm sure that some of you may have seen already this presentation, which is can give you a very good idea what is happening in the world in the coffee sector, but especially in Africa. So I'm not a very good presenter. I'll do my best, so be patient with me. Basically, you see this first slide there is all to do with the consuming countries and the Africa potential. If you see, on this United States and Brazil being the largest consumers in the world, and Brazil being one of the biggest producers in the world. So I born in Brazil, so I grow up drinking coffee. You know, I mean, actually there's some scientists, I don't know if it's true, that they relate a good playing football with drinking a lot of coffee. And that's perhaps I never joined any club. I didn't drink enough, so I should have drink a lot more. But coffee is drank in Brazil mega. You see the other coffee consuming countries there, the Europeans leading with United States, Japan. But you see also the emerging markets coming up, like Russia, South Korea, Turkey, etc. But when you see the producing countries, we are very low. Colombia is increasing, has increased already. Ethiopia, as you all know. Vietnam is increasing, Indonesia, India, China. As you see here on the graphics, you don't see any of our East and Central African countries. Yeah, so there's a long way to go, and I believe we all can contribute to that. From all these African consuming countries, you have Algeria with 27% of the 3/4 of the African consumption is concentrating in only 2 countries. So non-coffee producing country, Algeria with 27% and Ethiopia with 40%. Yeah. So if the average per capita yearly of coffee consumption in Africa is only 0.1 kilo per person per year, and below. So there's a long way to go to target 1 kilo per person per year. On this next graph, you see here there what the target is. Target by whom? By experts, that if we target 1 kilo per capita in Africa, we are going to, we have now, I mean, African producing countries is 0.8 billion people, and they're consuming 13 bags per year. So 80% of the African production would be consumed by the only producing countries. So if we would reach 1 kilo per head. If all Africa, 1.3 billion, would be consuming 1 kilo, we would need 21.7 bags per year, million bags per year. And the African production should be 132% of what is today. So this is we reach the target of 1 kilo. So meaning Uganda and other countries that are increasing production, they are not on the wrong path. They are on the absolutely right path. Because if we reach the target of improving consumption, we are going to need a lot more coffee. Yeah. The next slide is adding value along the chain. So if you see there, I mean, exports, I mean, price per bag, you know, a bit not exactly precise, but $120 per bag. Yeah. So this is, from this $120 is what part go to the growers. And basically, if they get, like in Brazil, 90%, they are very lucky. Yeah? In other countries, they get less than 70, less than 50% of the value of the export coffee. But if you go to the supermarket retail, adding value, you're going to have around $400 per bag. So 3 to 5 times more. Yeah? And with value addition, as Mr. Hamza said, and other colleagues have here said too. So value addition is very important. In restaurants and coffee shops, you go to $1,500 per bag. So 10 to 20 times more what one export bag. So there is a lot of money into value addition, into creating the culture of drinking coffee. Yeah. So, yeah, this is 60 kilo bags. Advantages of domestic consumption increase. For the coffee sector, you know, I mean, you are going to have increased demand for the country coffee, so you have a natural demand from local people. captive market for the local growers, opportunity to add value, a lot of opportunities, by the way, protection against exchange rate valuation, better prices for growers. Yeah. So is the network is shorter. So theoretically the grower could be dealing directly with the value addition investor. So yeah, basically then in government and country employment grows. There's going to be more employment and value employment, tax-based expansion and economic development, value addition again. Yeah. The coffee waves. I mean, the coffee, I mean, for those that are experts, there was 3 waves. There was the first wave in the 19th century and 20th century, coffee popularization, supporting role that coffee had, coffee with food, and espresso appears in Europe only in the 60s. So this is the first wave of coffee. The second wave came in the 80s and to 2000, coffee shop popularization, a new way to consume coffee, new coffee beverages, baristas, art and show. So this is the second wave. The third wave is the value experience, high quality, micro lots, which is something that I've been checking because I sell equipment, and micro lots is becoming very popular to segregate good coffee from different coffees. I mean, not mixing up good with average coffee, but to have very, very special coffees in small lots. Of course, high quality, origins, roasting, more informed consumers, and new preparation methodologies. So you see there on the slides, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to do coffee today, and we keep surprised going to seminars and exhibitions on coffee, the new technology, new things coming up all the time. Yeah, so, and new brewing techniques as well, sophisticated roasting as well. So the coffee waves. So first wave, as I mentioned, it was basically coffee at home. The second wave, specialty coffee shops. And the third one now is experience of drinking coffee, and drinking coffee is value. Plus, is a kind of a status. I compare, I mean, and many other people compare, I mean, coffees will reach a point where we are already there, that it is comparable to wines. So if I'm a wine drinker, I like to have a variety of wines in my home to drink, or when I go to a place. I believe coffee should reach the same level than wine. So in one sense, I'm a bit skeptical about protection of industries for importations. Sorry about my colleagues mentioned that before, but I think that the coffee culture supposed not to prohibit other coffees to be on the market. And this is basically, these coffees will reach the top pyramid, will not reach the bottom. So and the expansion is really on the bottom, not on the top. So I think the top should have to be to access any type of coffee. I mean, why not have a Colombian or Ethiopian or a Tanzanian or a Brazilian or vice versa in Brazil and any other country in the world? You would not like that Rwanda coffee is prohibited to enter, I don't know what country. Why not Rwanda coffee in Ethiopia? So we need to consider all that. Yeah, the difference between, yeah, this is the, yeah, I'm repeating myself. Yeah, so the first wave, just going back a little bit, the first wave, the third, the second and the third is very few people. It's just started kind of. The second wave, there's a lot, you see a lot of growth already, and it's amazing what is being happening in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and other countries in Africa with coffee shops and so on. So this is a trend and is happening more and more and more. In Nairobi, I saw coffee shops, excellent coffee shops with roasting in front of the clients in a car wash. So I believe this is a tendency, a trend, and is not going to, there is no reverse. I think it's going to grow even more. So, and where are we in Africa? On the next slide. We are basically, I mean, you see the first wave is the home consumption. And that's where the market is for all of us. You know, that a stronger coffee industry helped me a lot, otherwise I don't sell equipment. So I have the same interest in all of you here to have a strong coffee sector. So, but where is the opportunity for Africa? The second wave, we are already there and it's growing. So there is no question. But this is a pocket. These pockets must be a bit deeper to consume on the second wave. The first wave is the average consumer, the low-income people consuming, and that's where we need to put a lot of focus and develop this type of, so to talk about all these things and convince and popularize coffee into the low-income people. And like many of you here already said, you know, the benefits of coffee. Coffee it gains energy. Yeah, people becomes more alert, and it's a food too. So the goal is to transform the third and second wave to be vehicles to reach the first wave or the homes. Yes, a number, yeah, I mean, you see the top pyramid there, glamour, modern, cool fashion, socialize, nice and cool. So everything to do with the millennials, as our colleague just mentioned, you know, I mean, they are informed. That is where the middle class and high class or top class, whatever, they are already there and they are getting more and more information. The youth, they are getting more and more information. So the vehicles to reach there, it's very important. But we need to trigger that from top to bottom. They must bring this home, to their homes, to their families and so on, that coffee becomes a culture within their homes. Yeah? So educate and improve quality. Quality is proportional to income, obviously. So now this slide is basically to demonstrate in 1965, 1990, and 16 what was the consumption. Yeah. So 73% in 65 was traditional markets. Yeah, Europe, Japan, US, etc. 25% was basically producing countries drinking. Majority was really Brazil and few others, Ethiopia. 2% only emerging markets. You see in 90 these numbers start changing, and the producing countries even drop the consumption. Now in 16 there is some improvement. There is a good improvement on the producing countries drinking more coffee, and the emerging markets, of course. But if you see the statistics, the amount of coffee that we, Africa, as a producing countries we have is negligible, 0.1 kilo per person per year. Yeah? So that's why if we target to increase to 1 kilo, what is going to represent in terms of plantations, value addition, anyway, business. And there is a lot of people who say that the emerging countries, especially Asia, is going to make a big difference in the coffee consumption. And me and other people, I mean, we tend to believe that Africa has a much bigger role to play than people can see. So we believe that Africa, with the right incentives, the right education, the right approach, we can reach a lot more consumption per capita than we have now. Next is basically Brazil, Ethiopia. I mean, basically, this was an IACO step-by-step guide to promote coffee consumption in producing countries. This thing, IACO hired our partners PNA, which belong to Carlos Brando, to develop this step-by-step, and has been used all over the world increase consumption in certain countries. There is still today, is a bit old, but it's still today the best guide so far to increase coffee consumption. Yeah. So this is about 15 years old. If you see the next slide, and this you can access on IACO and other entities. So coffee consumption programs that used the IACO guide. You see the India, Mexico, Indonesia, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Colombia. Colombia it was the longest program and increased 36% of their consumption. It's interesting to know, I mean, you all know, I mean, big countries that produce coffees and coffees that are recognized for high quality in certain aspects, like Kenya, like Colombia, like many others, yeah, Rwanda, and not forgetting Tanzania and Uganda too, sorry. But anyway, for you to know, I mean, everybody knows Juan Valdez shops in Colombia, very famous, yeah, internationally. And this research and this program in Colombia discovered that 60% of the Colombian people did not know what Juan Valdez is. And 80% never enter one shop. But they increased 36% of their consumption. Now there is, the latest one is in Costa Rica, all these countries that you can read there. Yeah, and there's a lot of experiences, interesting ones. No? In India, there was a big promotion to support small and medium roasters that in turn would support to cater for low-income consumers. I was in Tanzania recently in one of our clients on roasting coffee, and I was very surprised that he told me that his volumes are only not high quality. Good coffee, but not high quality. But the cheaper coffees that go to low-income people. So meaning there is something happening that we don't know, but is happening. And I think the coffee is reaching too slow, as they say in Swahili, pole pole, too pole pole, the low income consumers. Yes, so yeah, Colombia again, I mean, they did a very good job there. They increased to 2.2 kilos per year. So it was a very big achievement they reached. Yeah, the program went from 28 to 2009 and released on 2010 and executed from 2010 to 2016. So it's possible, yeah, so, but of course there is some requirements. Anyway, the lessons learned from IACO guide applications, I mean, yeah, you need to bring different actors together. It's not only the government is going to solve, not the private sector, not the associations, it's a combined effort. And that's how the defense can happen. So different actors together. Conceive the programs. And by the way, talking about my own field, you know, I mean, there is a tendency always to leave the technology a bit aside. They forget that for suppliers of equipment play a huge role to make the industry stronger. As Mr. Hamza said, we need new technologies, we need better equipment, and etc. And that's what also can cooperate a lot into the increase of consumption and other areas. So strategies to increase consumption and leading to the program. Structures and financing. Without money, there is no business. We all know that. And the financing, as our other colleagues already said, in Africa is not cheap. You know, I mean, 2%, 3%, 1% in Europe, while here we pay 10, 15, 20% a year. So it's very difficult for the investor, the entrepreneurs to invest in business in Africa. We need to change that somehow. They say there's a lot of money for Africa. I keep looking for it. I never find anything that is very easy and cheap to get. So maybe someone can help me. And again, I mean, on the next, who should start? Government, private sector, associations, and others. So, and must be a convener, must be someone in this network that is really strong and therefore can lead on the things. So yeah, but the first step is consumer survey. We need to do a proper research to see what is happening and how we are going to reach our goals. Promotion strategies, you know, the next, coffee and health, as all of you mentioned already before, well-being, sports, low-income consumer to attract these low-income people, show aspiration. Yeah, so, and all these things. So let me go a bit faster. So promotion strategies, these all can be seen also in this ICO document. Yeah, you can go further. We can use, we need to use also our influencers, people that influence the people to drink more coffee or drink more this or that. In general, there is need a lot of promotions as well that can help this thing to happen. And we need to conclude, we need to reach the mass consumption. That's where the money is, that's where the production can increase, and that's where the farmers can make more money and everybody on the value chain. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for that. I think you are highlighting the fact that we need to get improved technologies for us to be able to increase our production and reach the masses that we require. For the interest of time, I'll just ask one of our panelists to talk to us on this conflicting view of importing coffee and growing our own, and what challenges do we have within Africa that frustrates trade within our countries, and why it's convenient for some countries to import coffee and coffee products. So Mr. Hamza, can you just tell us, with your experience trading in Africa, what stumbling blocks you've got through, and what the team here, the policymakers, and IACO can do to change the same?
Yeah, this is a very important question, and that's one of the biggest barriers which hinder the local African entrepreneurs from entering that industry in order to do value addition. Because, for instance, if you go to certain countries in Africa, if you look at Kenya, where you come from, you'll find there's a lot of imported coffees in Kenya, whereas East African common tax is 35% for roasted and ground coffee. And one of the countries like Uganda is charging up to 60% import duty on imported coffees. But you find those coffees find their ways into the country. I doubt whether they are paying those taxes. That's one of the biggest problems which we face. Similarly, if you go to Egypt, I've been there personally. We were trying to export our coffees to Egypt, but Tanzania was not part of COMESA, and we were told that we'll be paying import duties of 60% plus 16% VAT. But when I was talking with one of the agents of a coffee from Europe, with coffee shops in Egypt, he told me within 3 days, if he orders, he gets his coffee and he does not pay a single penny in taxes, no VAT, because that is counted as a raw material in his coffee shops. You go to Algeria or North African states, you find that African coffees are being traded, and they say we import coffee from Italy, we import coffee from France. And I asked them, does France grow coffee or Italy grow coffee? And they say, no, these coffees are bought from Tanzania, from Kenya, Uganda, and other countries, and then sold again to African countries. And when you go to your local consumption site, find imported coffees there, and sometimes you find those coffees are much cheaper than our coffees. Reasons for that being many things. Like if you go to Vietnam, Vietnam has got about 7 or 8 freeze-drying coffee plants in Vietnam. And FOB cost for coffee in Vietnam, coffee grown in Buon Ma Thuot to Ho Chi Minh and to to the port, you find it's $37. Whereas coffee grown in my area, Kagera to port in Dar es Salaam, sometimes it's got to $240 per ton. This is one issue. Another issue is electricity. Power is expensive in African continent. Third issue is packaging materials in certain countries are not of that quality, and especially in East Africa, we don't have the investments in packaging industry. And then when you go to those coffees, you find those coffees are packaged nicely coming from outside Africa, but the quality of that coffee, if it is tested in a laboratory, is different. One of the those coffee samples past year was tested by my own company accidentally. And then we thought it was good because first an employee had made a mistake, but then we found that it was educative because we took that instant coffee of 3-in-1 to our laboratories, TBS, and they sent us a report saying why the caffeine content is very low. It's less than 2%, when we know that it should be having at least minimum of between 5 or 4%. So we found that that coffee was containing a lot of adulterants inside it. So you find the foreign coffees coming in at a cheaper price are really not good quality of coffees, but they've been packaged and advertised. You find our young generation and people drinking those coffees. From the policy makers, I will request the policy makers to be strict on importation of those foreign coffees with duties, because if we take an example of sugar industries in Tanzania, in order to safeguard the local sugar industries, the government put up a very high import duty on sugar. So I think we should also impose high duties on imported coffees into our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And we can have a long debate, but for the interest of time, being reminded that we need to stop because there's another session after a coffee break. So thank you very much, my panelists. Can we just give them a warm applause? Thank you, and asante sana.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you very much. Let's give them another hand of applause. They've deserved it. All right before we go to coffee break, quickly, a reminder for the PCR tests. For those traveling tomorrow is Thursday, those traveling tomorrow, there will be buses parked outside from 3 p.m. For those traveling tomorrow, the buses take off at 4 p.m. If you try to board after 4 p.m., they will be gone. They'll be going to the venue in town. It's for the PCR test, which you pay for yourself. For those traveling on Friday, the same thing will be done tomorrow. So there will be buses available tomorrow. I'll communicate with you the time for tomorrow right after this coffee break. The coffee break starts now. We have 30 minutes. Let's be back here at 11:45. Thank you very much. All right, so let me repeat a few of the instructions that I gave earlier, just in case everybody didn't catch them. For those who are testing, who are doing their COVID testing before flying out tomorrow, those who are flying out tomorrow, this is just for those who leave the country tomorrow. Today, we will have buses parked here, ready to take you to the venue where you'll get tested. The bus will be here and will leave here by 4. So make sure you're on board by 4. They'll take you to the testing. It will take no longer than an hour to go and come back. You won't have to make a queue. You go there, you pay for your own testing, and you come back right away. So the bus will take you to the testing venue, which is called KCEV. It's in town. The buses will take you there. That's for those who are traveling tomorrow. Those who are traveling the day after, on Friday, tomorrow the same buses will be here, and they'll be ready to take you by 5 p.m. So today, 4 p.m., latest time to board the bus. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. Is that clear? Can we move on? All right. Alors, pour ceux qui voyagent demain, il y aura des bus prêts à vous emmener à l'endroit où vous allez vous faire tester en ville, au centre-ville de Kigali. L'endroit s'appelle KCEV. Les bus vous emmèneront à 16h d'ici. C'est-à-dire les bus vont partir d'ici à 16h. Il faut être dans le bus avant 16h. Ils vous emmèneront à l'endroit, vous payez pour votre test Covid, ils vous ramènent, le bus vous ramène. Vous n'aurez pas à faire la queue, ça sera très rapide. Ça, c'est pour ceux qui voyagent demain. Pour ceux qui voyagent le lendemain, donc vendredi, les bus vous y emmèneront demain à 17h. Il faudrait être dans le bus à 17h pour pouvoir vous rendre à l'endroit du test. À 17h. Alors pour ceux qui voyagent samedi, à la fin de ce panel, j'aurai les instructions qu'il faut pour vous. À la fin de ce panel, juste avant d'aller au lunch. C'est bon? Can we move on? All right. For the next panel, which is called Improve the Financing of the African Coffee Sector, I call on Dr. Frederick Karuma, who's the African Coffee Ambassador of Uganda, to please take the reins. Thank you. Once again, for this one, we're a bit behind time. It was supposed to end at 1:30. Let's give it until it was supposed to end at 2 p.m. So let's try to go until, let's say 1:50, if it's possible. Thank you.
What time is lunch?
Lunch is at 2 p.m.
Okay.
Let's try to go until 1:50 because there's summary to be made, and then let's go 2 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. I would like to invite the panelists to come forward. I have Mr. Jean-Claude Ilbonnet. Is he here? Jean-Claude. I have Dr. Denis Sedier. Yes. I see there are I have 3 panelists. I don't have enough seats. I need another.
Protocol team, can we have another seat, please? Protocol team, thank you.
Yes, as they sort that out, I have the third panelist is Madame Nancy Chariot. Once the chair sorted out, she'll come and join.
Moderator, the third panelist is online, so we don't need a seat for him.
That's the fourth panelist. I have 4 panelists. 3 are here and 1 is online.
1 extra seat, please. 1 extra seat, thank you.
Sorry about that. Now, the rules of the game are going to be such that, when I was invited to speak, I was told that I must not have more than 6 slides. So you notice that my presentation was 6 slides. So I hope that the presenters here have also followed those instructions so that we'll not have more than, if you have 20 slides, you'll have to rush through them so that in 10 minutes you can finish your presentation. And then we need to have more time for discussion. In fact, if there are any questions that people have from the previous panel, can also be brought up so that we get answers. So I'll also want to ask somebody who will serve as a timekeeper, who will give the notice when it is 3 minutes left, and then 1 minute left, and then after that, the speaker will have to close. I think those rules will help us to. Welcome, Madame Nancy. So yes, I was saying I needed a timekeeper from the floor. I want to appoint a timekeeper. Abraham. Dr. Abraham, are you able to be a timekeeper? Good. Okay. So I'll start with the panelist on my left, who is Jean-Claude Ilibonnet. Jean-Claude is currently the head of business development at the Rwanda Development Bank, or Development Bank of Rwanda. He's in charge of developing and implementing the bank's business strategy and seeks to invest in the bank's priority sectors, delivering products, solutions that address the needs in the market. Now, Mr. Jean-Claude is a person who has accumulated experience over 18 years in the financial sector, and he's been working with the Development Bank of Rwanda since 2006, and he has occupied various senior positions in the bank, from investment, operations, credit management, and he has led investment transactions, structuring within various sectors of the economy, from manufacturing, agriculture, energy, transport, real estate, infrastructure, and tourism. So he's a man with a wealth of experience, and he has an MBA in finance from Netherlands Maastricht School of Management. It's one of the top management schools in Europe. So Jean-Claude brings to us a great wealth of experience in finance. So you have the floor, Mr. Jean-Claude.
Thank you, Dr. Frederick, for the introduction, for introducing myself. First of all, I would also like to start by thanking the organizers and also the opportunity that are given to us to share the experience. Most likely also to thank the Honorable State Minister for the opening remarks. That was very insightful. So, Robert, I would like to request the technical team to show the, actually, I have only 3 slides. I think I will not take too long. So great.
That's good.
They could display it. So I can start maybe by the time they are actually putting the presentation. As Doctor said, I'm coming from BRD. BRD is a development institution in Rwanda that has been actually supporting development projects through financing, providing debts and equity and other advisory services since actually we are now 54 years old. So it's an institution that has been supporting actively the economy of our country. So we actually have private sectors that include, among others, agriculture, manufacturing, energy, education, infrastructure, housing, and also with a very special focus on export. So BRD has been actually supporting the coffee sector since its creation. So I just maybe give you some highlights on what we started. Actually, we started initially by supporting or financing the production, providing financing for plantations, and also through investment loans, as I said, but also we're providing some sort of kind of working capital for trading, mainly for exporting. But towards 1990s, towards end. So we started also financing the processing to make sure that we stop actually exporting what we could call raw material and try to add value on what we have been exporting. So we started now financing facility investment, putting investment into facilities to process coffee, where we started financing some coffee washing stations to improve and now start exporting the full washed coffee. At the same time, we also actually work closely with the government as the development institution. So we also, at the same time, we participated in creation of cooperatives. We had a couple of portfolio of different coffee farmers that we participated to put them together to be able to access financing and also be able to also have the processing facilities for also to start exporting the full washed coffee. So at the same time, those cooperatives that were formed at that time, mainly composed by the coffee farmers, where we financed their coffee washing station and other facilities that were needed at that time. But at the same time, also we continue to support them through providing the working capital for them to be able to process during the season and export. So during that, actually, because now we're discussing in context of financing coffee sector, at that time, actually, BRD was, may say, playing almost more than 90% role in terms of financing coffee sector. It was not really a sector that was very attractive to other our colleagues in the banking industry, but by the time we started now financing the facility to start processing coffee further and exporting full washed coffee, also we saw an interest from commercial banks to start also financing the sector. So at the same time, we start seeing more and more interest for commercial banks to finance the coffee sector. If you could go for the next slide, please. Yes, so mainly they were also financing coffee washing stations and also working capital. But in terms of plantation, they were not really much involved because of the nature and also the capital, the nature of the capital that is required in terms of the tenure, the grace period that is required for the plantation to be ready to generate income. So, but at least they started with investment into processing part and also working capital. And then that was very, actually, we start seeing the portfolio that we had being shared among the commercial banks, and that's actually even, that's part of the BRD mandates. We are actually here to try to de-risk some of the sectors that are not being taken care of in terms of financing, and once now the industry, the banking industry is ready to take off, then we start, we go for other things. So in the same line, actually, when we saw that commercial banks now, they have interest in financing coffee sector, then now we started focusing on the value chain financing approach. So where we started now with support of government to support, try to see, to assess the value chain. Yes, now we have the plantation production, but we have also the processing, but also we need to start supporting our producers, our farmers, to make sure that they access the market, but also to have, in some instances, to have a finished product for consumption. So with that approach of value chain financing, actually we come up with the branded financing, where we have through the Export Growth Fund. So we have different windows that could, the coffee farmers or coffee actors could actually tap into and access. So currently we have investment catalyst window, which is mainly we are funding the investment needs of the coffee actors through when they need to expand or they want to diversify, or startups, they can access the investment catalyst window. So the good thing is that we actually are providing interest subsidy, as maybe from the previous discussions that happened. Some of the panelists actually raised a concern of the cost of funds that are available. So with that investment catalyst window, we also provide an interest subsidy, where actually it's around 6.5% deduction on the normal interest that is prevailing on the market, which is actually so it's very encouraging for actually the coffee actors to continue investing, to expand, and also diversify. But also, as I said, we have matching grant that we're also providing to coffee actors, mainly to support them to access regional, continent, and also international markets. So we, from the last experience, we have actually observed that most of the coffee, yes, they are processing, but they are actually selling it. Some of them selling to the sort of intermediaries, and actually their coffee is not. Sometimes they even get rebranded for another, for instance, for the intermediaries, and then the coffee is sold as a coffee from X, yet it is a coffee that is coming from B, and that we saw that was an issue. Then we started also providing a matching grant for them to be able to access the market. The matching grant actually is supporting them to be able to get certification. As you know, one of the conditions to access the international market, you have to get there's some requirement in terms of standards, in terms of certification. So we are supporting the exporters, actually the producers of coffee, to get those certification required, and also to participate in different trade fair, international trade fair, to be able to interact with other actors in the industry, and be able also to get some markets across the world. So, but at the same time, also that matching grant is also supporting them to be able to standardize their products, to sort of labeling, to support them in labeling, doing some market research, barcoding, and also packaging, to make sure that whatever they are ready to export has really it's competitive on the market. So just to mention a few, we have helped some of the companies through the matching grant that have now been able to access the Alibaba platform. They are now selling coffee on that platform. So the matching grant, we provide 50% as a grant, and then the promoter or the investor also provide 50% to that particular investment to be done for them to be able to access the market. So again, as it was also mentioned in the previous panel, the issue of also cost of funding. Even though I'm saying that commercial banks have now shown interest into financing the coffee sector, the cost and the conditions are still very constrained, tight. So we also, under the same funding, we are also providing on lending or wholesale to commercial banks. So we give funds to commercial banks for them to be able to on lend to coffee processors or coffee actors at a very competitive rate. If you just to give you an overview, currently, if you go to the market, you could easily get 17% interest rate. But if you go through the fund, even if you are getting the funds from the commercial banks, you can have the loan at 12%, which is quite very supportive in terms of reducing the cost of financing. So having said that, but also we have maybe the challenges that I would wish to share is that from our experience, we have been experiencing market volatility in terms of international market prices that has been up and down, and having very serious impact on most of our clients. And some of actually...
Dr. Abraham is warning that your time is running out.
Yeah, I'm actually almost time. So, and some of the coffee processors actually could even not even absorb the shock, and some had to exit completely. So I think that's actually a very big challenge that is still they're still facing in terms of getting finance and be able to pay back and have additional financing. And also there's another concern, market diversification. So you could see that we are almost exporting. Yes, it's good because we are getting more income, but we should also try to uplift or to increase our domestic consumption. I think that's what the previous discussion, to make sure that we diversify our market. In case we are actually being affected by the international market, at least we have a component which is quite significant that could help us, or could help the coffee operators to observe the shock. Another challenge is still sufficient de-risking instruments that are on the market. I think there is a need also to improve on the available de-risking instruments in terms of, if we take an example of the challenge that I've just mentioned above, which is market volatility. So I think there is a possibility of maybe creating a guarantee fund that could specifically cater for that issue. Whenever the condition of the market is good and we are getting more, we are gaining more, we could also think of having supporting the guarantee fund, and in case we have challenges in terms of the market prices fluctuation, we also have that fund to support the coffee exporters. Also it is very important, and that's something I try to commend, because from the previous discussion, we also need to improve, to increase domestic consumption through education and also awareness for people to understand, but also try to make the product that we are putting on the market also affordable, considering our class categories of people. The last one is actually BRD, also with different stakeholders. We continue to try to assess and see how we can introduce a different de-risking instrument that could also continue to support the coffee sector in general. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Jean-Claude. That's quite informative. Just a moment. Dr. Abraham is our timekeeper, so he's trying to make sure that he keeps track of. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jean-Claude. I won't go into what you have shared. I think I'll take the time to introduce the next presenter. And next presenter is Dr. Denis Sedieu. I've known Dr. Sedieu for more than half a century, more than a quarter of a century, I beg your pardon. Dr. Sedieu earned his doctorate in international economy and finance from the University of MSL in France in 1986. And from there, he started teaching at the university in Cote d'Ivoire. He was teaching, he was a lecturer in the economics department, and he was teaching economic analysis, macroeconomics, commodity economics, international commodity trading. And then from 1991 to 96, he served as a technical advisor at the Ministry of Commodities in Cote d'Ivoire. It is now called Ministry of Commerce, and he was monitoring the membership to the many international commodity bodies that the Republic of Cote d'Ivoire is a member of. And then in 1996, in April, he was appointed chief economist at the IACO in London, and he has been heading the economics and projects section since then. He has contributed to the elaboration, monitoring, and evaluation of many development projects benefiting the coffee sector in producing countries. And therefore, we have somebody here who has over 25 years of experience in these international coffee events, conferences, and and seminars. Dr. Sedieu, you have the floor, and Dr. Abraham will be signaling to you let you know
Okay.
how you proceed.
Thank you, Dr. Fred Karuma. Thank you for this extensive introduction of myself, and it's a bit flattering. Ladies and gentlemen, my topic for my contribution is financing the African coffee sector, the missing link. I hope the technician are with us to show my presentation. Okay. So, as you all know, agriculture continues to be the main employer of Africa's increasing young population of over 1 billion inhabitants. And also we know that the rural population continues to rise. No, before that, just wait for my signal before turning, please. Go to the introduction, please. No, the first picture, yes. You stay there and I will let you know. So, a sustainable coffee industry in Africa will be based on the well-being of the various actors of the value chain, particularly the producers who own mainly small holding, varying in size from 0.3 to 5 hectares. So, and when we talk about sustainable coffee farmer, that is a farmer that will meet the long-term environmental and social goal, and also to be able to compete effectively with other actors in the sector. So, my intervention will be focused on coffee farmers, financing coffee farmers. And the purpose will be to explore how best to address this issue, their financing needs, the financing need of the small-scale coffee farmer in order to contribute effectively to building a resilient and a vibrant coffee sector in Africa, as the theme suggested. So, next. So, I will cover quickly, and moderator, I won't take long. I will cover quickly this topic. First of all, I will talk briefly about the dynamic of the African coffee industry. We all know that Africa is the region with the largest number of coffee producing countries, 25 in Africa compared to 11 in Asia and Oceania region, and 12 in Central America and Mexico, and 8 in South America. So, although Africa is the main source of coffee, but we have to note that coffee also is a source of income for more than 12 million people. But Africa has exhibited negative trend following the disappearance of a mechanism for direct intervention in the market, like international coffee export quota, and also the liberalization of the marketing system in early 90s. So we should note also that there are 2 African countries, Ethiopia and Uganda, who produce over 13 million 60 kilo bag. That represents 69%, over 69% for all African production in recent year. Next, please. But as all the previous speakers from yesterday noticed, that our production in Africa, although it is now stabilized around 12 million bags, compared to what it used to be over 20 million bags. and consequently, its share of world production has been reduced from 22% to today to 10.6%. Next. But one point I would like to mention before moving on the finance aspect is that the average production of Africa is below the production of Vietnam alone. So although in 80s and 90s, Africa was producing over 19 million bags on average, while Vietnam was producing only 500,000 bags. But you can see from this slide that in the 90s, the production of Vietnam start increasing to 4.7 million bags, while Africa average was 16. And today, Vietnam is producing 29 million bags, and compared to Africa. So what went wrong? The next, please. So the consequence is obviously on export, and I think people talk about it, losing our share of the market. As you can see, Vietnam used to have 0.5% of the market in the 80s, and today they have 21%, while Africa is around 10% of the market. So we have a lot of challenges. I'm not going to go to the detail, but I know that the main challenge affecting the coffee production in Africa, from the production perspective, is the lack of capital investment required to increase in productivity through access to inputs, continuous extension service to smallholder farmers, and relevant infrastructure for marketing. Since the government left the sector, so the extension service to small-scale farmers has become a serious challenge. Next. So the main point, the main factor that will have an impact on financing is farmers' organization. Farmers are not organized in strong and viable groups and cooperatives in many African countries. So they cannot handle easily the issue of access to input and credit efficiency on behalf of their members. So the consequence is obviously limited access to inputs, because individual farmer cannot get input. With farmer producing 1 bag or 2 bag, 60 kilo bag cannot easily access to input unless government assists. But due to the fact that the government are no longer directly involved in the process, so this become an issue. Next. So how can we address these financial needs of coffee farmers? The first thing I will call precondition for a successful coffee sector finance. The preconditions are, first of all, strong farmers' organization, so building their capacity through extension service. I may just, to put it simply, providing extension service is a very expensive activity, and government cannot always afford. I remember when government was directly involved, each village center in Côte d'Ivoire used to have 1 or 2 extensionists in the village, following farmers every day. But today we don't have. And as the company, the institution providing extension service is considered now private, so the farmer has to either to pay or the extensionists cannot afford visiting farmers every day, even every month or every year. So this is one of the problem. So if we have a strong cooperative, so the cooperative can act as a, what we call local transmission mechanism, meaning that the cooperative can provide training to its member. Yes, okay. Talking also about the role of a government now in addressing the finance. So what I said, the precondition is a strong farmers organization. That's where we can use farmers organization to address the issues directly to farmers. But without that, it will be difficult. Then what will be also the role of a government in this, scenario to improve financing? The government should, please, the government should create an enabling environment. As you know, many speakers have talked about it. But more particularly, the government should assist in setting up a guarantee fund as a collateral for bank loan, not a guarantee fund to manage volatility or coffee price, but as a collateral for the coffee cooperative to be able to be bankable and to de-risk the loan. So setting a guarantee fund will be one of the key points. Next. So in conclusion, what I can say is the pillar to achieve a resilient and sustainable coffee sector in Africa are based on the following: strong farmer organization and government support through what I mentioned as like a collateral for a commercial bank and credit guarantees, and also legal environment where, you know, to get a loan, sometimes the guarantee can be a land, but we have a land, the management of a land is a serious issue in many African countries. So, next. As you may be aware, the Africa Coffee Facility has been designed in collaborations, collaborating work with IACO. IACO is the pioneer, and with ICO and CABI, that summarize all the challenges and how we can get the African coffee sector sustainable. So those things, we hope that many government, many sectors will support this in order to address those challenges I mentioned and the challenges we've been talking about since yesterday. You know, you cannot keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Denis. Again, I want to go into summarizing what Dr. Denis has talked about. I will now invite the next panelist. We have two panelists. We have Madame Nancy Cheriot, and then we have a panelist who is online, who will come in, will be the one to do last, is Mr. Nicholas Mudungwe, who is based in Yaoundé. Okay, I think we can have Mr. Mudungwe right now. He's based in Yaoundé. Mr. Mudungwe is an economist who has made immense contribution to the development of SMEs and agricultural value chains in Africa. He has 25 years of national, regional, and international experience in trade, industrial, and agro-based value chain development. He's been involved in working in 3 continents. He's worked in Africa, in Europe, and in the Pacific. He has diverse experience, having worked in the public sector, the NGO, as well as in the regional and international organizations. He's designed strategies and frameworks that are being implemented in more than 13 African countries on the development of value chains. Mr. Mudungwe has also consulted for COMESA, SADC, the EU, USAID, ITC, FAO, GIZ, and the Pacific Island Secretariat Forum, among others. He's an outstanding team player and participatory-based value chain development. He's a presenter, trainer, communicator, and he's a natural leader. And we are pleased to have you, Mr. Mudungwe, to make your presentation to us I know that in Yaoundé it is this morning, but here in Kigali it is afternoon. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I don't know if you can hear me in Kigali.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. My name is already introduced, is Nicholas Mudungwe, and I want to thank IACO for inviting me to make this presentation. I also want to recognize the heavyweights that have just made presentations, and also to salute the Rwanda Development Bank for the work they are already doing, because without finance, we cannot grow the coffee value chain. And also to recognize the point raised by Dr. Denise about the role of government in supporting or funding extended services. I want to reinforce this point to say, in my view, government must support, finance extension services, because we see in developed countries, they are now in high tech, and the governments of those countries are investing huge amounts in research. So for us, we are still building the base, and it is incumbent upon our governments to support that base. I'm of the view that a government is like a mother or a father, and you cannot give birth to children and leave them away to be supported by other people and say we have no business in supporting business or in supporting agriculture. Can we say a parent has no business in supporting his children? So I take a farmer's perspective and say the government should continue to support extended services for the development of value chains in Africa. I have a small problem. My screen is freezing. You see, this is the problem of, okay, it's moving now, okay. So I work in ITC in Geneva, but today I'm in Yaoundé doing some field work with the CICC, who are doing fantastic work to revamp the coffee sector here in Cameroon using an approach which they call new generation, where they are giving support at every node of the value chain, from nursery to the market, to ensure that all issues pertaining to production, harvesting, and post-harvesting are all taken care of. They are doing fantastic work. I've seen their work in cocoa, where they are getting first-grade cocoa, which is entering into the premium market. And the merit of entering into the premium market, I will relate this to the point which was shared by Jean about price volatility. If you are supplying your goods to a premium market, usually the term volatility doesn't appear there. So it is critical that we focus on improving the quality. Once we do quality, we get premium prices. So I want to acknowledge and say these two heavyweights have already done work maybe that I was supposed to do, but I'll quickly go over my presentation. In ITC, we are working under what we call Alliances for Action, which is an approach that aims to bring together stakeholders in a participatory way. We believe that the government, the private sector, and international agencies, among other stakeholders, they have a role to play in enhancing the performance of value chains. And we are of the view that if they work together, the synergistic benefits that arises are greater than the sum total of individuals working alone. And I think it reinforces the point that Dr. Denise already shared with you about strong cooperative or strong farmers organizations. If we have those strong facilities, even the transaction costs on the side of government to provide extension services, it declines. The provision of funds, the transaction cost for banks to provide finance also decreases because we are dealing with an established structure representing many people. So if you want to make an appointment, it's one phone call to the chair or to the secretary, and the way it reaches more than 10,000 farmers. But if you have to call every farmer to deal with that particular farmer, then you see the cost will be high, and therefore it will be difficult for the government to support. So if we have strong associations that can offer value to farmers, that will ensure that the budget allocated will have and will deliver more impact than currently where we are dealing with these scattered farmers. I've experienced working in Africa, and also partly I've interfaced with the Rwanda Development Bank in the development of the leather sector, where the Rwanda Development Bank was also trying to support that sector in the setting up of clusters, which is the same approach of having strong cooperatives. And the Alliance for Action approach that we are implementing in ITC has 5 steps, but today I'll only focus on the 4th step. But maybe a quick rundown of the steps. The first step is to understand the situation before we prescribe. Many a time we find most international organizations, we design our templates behind our computers, then we come and say to developing countries, please do A, B, C, D, and we get this result. But at International Trade Center, under the Alliance for Action approach, the design of interventions is informed by the stakeholders. In the coffee project, we are working with ACRAM and focal points in the target countries. And these organizations have been involved from the design step of a program that we are now currently implementing, funded by the European Union in partnership with the OACPS, formerly ACP. So once you involve and you understand the situation, you then convene to bring the stakeholders together and make a firm commitment. So for value chain to be strong, or the strength of a value chain is defined by its weakest point. So if we have a weaker harvest and post-harvest node, it means all the investment that we have made in production will be lost. If we have a weak financial support, it means the value chain will break down. So we bring all the critical stakeholders and we agree and confirm as farmers, what are you able to offer? We are able to offer these volumes of what quality? This quality. Who is the buyer? I am here the buyer. I'm able to offer this price. And in Cameroon, they are implementing a similar approach in partnership with us, whereby they are even bringing buyers who commit to buy quality of a certain grade at a certain price. That provides comfort, confidence, and stability, and it builds trust. So then after the convene, we do transform. Transform is all range of capacity building activities. Fast forward to invest. Under invest, that's where we try to understand, to address financial issues. I think the constraints have been discussed in detail. I will not go into town about them. But what we seek to do is to understand the financial needs and the financial gaps with which our colleague from Rwanda Development Bank has highlighted. What kind of finance is needed by a coffee farmer is different from finance needed by a tomato farmer. So we need to know the type of finance that will make coffee viable as a farmer, that will make an owner of a washing station viable. All these are different packages. But if we do one size fits it all, we end up feeding toddlers with, in Kenya, they call it ugali. I think the same in Rwanda. And you know, ugali is a very thick porridge, which a baby cannot swallow. So we force these farmers to swallow a certain financial instrument that will result in them collapsing. So we need a financial package that is suitable for them. The other thing that I've discovered working with the value chains is that we all talk about not having money. But if I ask farmers, how much do you need to address your problem? Or if I ask associations, how much money is needed to address problems? If I ask even government departments, they will not be able to come up with a figure because they are not prepared. So this process of alliances for action, we try to quantify the financial needs, the gap, so that we can approach financial institutions with a package that critically shows what we need. So we usually commission what we call investment appraisals, which leads to the designing of investment prospectus. These investment prospectus would show that if you want to start a farm of say 1 hectare, what are the inputs? What are the expected cash flow in and out? And what is the payback period? And what is the net present value? What is the gain that can be achieved from that kind of investment? Armed with that kind of information, a farmer can go to the bank and say, this is my investment proposal. I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and this is likely to be my cash flow, so give me this kind of money. So with that information, banks can be able to decide whether to finance a farmer, to finance someone who wants to set up a wash station, to finance someone who wants to set up a nursery. Why we are taking this approach of doing this research and presenting this kind of data? We have seen that there's shortage of financial information intelligence in Africa. And most of the banks, outside development banks, they don't have research departments to get that kind of information that then allows them to make decisions. So in implementing our project, by providing that information, we are providing a public good that can then assist banks to decide whether to invest in A and B. If you look at the approach by Rwanda Development Bank, as explained, they started themselves, and now commercial banks have seen. Now they're using the data, I think that was generated by Rwanda Development Agents to make investment or loaning, to design their loaning portfolios. So in short, this is the kind of work that we are also doing in the countries that we are working in, to provide that kind of information so that the banks can make decisions, and also investors who have money. If we can show that, I have a full presentation, I've tried to remove certain segments. In that presentation, I also have examples of the findings of this, okay, this is the slide. This is extracted from an investment prospectus from Uganda. So this kind of information can even assist independent investors to say, as a private guy, I want to come and invest in a washing station, and then I charge farmers for bringing their coffee to me. So it's easier because the information is there to make a decision. So we know it is expensive to get information. So we are trying to make that information available under Alliance for Action, which will benefit the farmers, the financial institutions, and all the stakeholders around. We all know the problems are all well known. So we are saying, what steps should we take to close those gaps? The other things that I think also Mr. Arabi, our colleague from Rwanda Development Bank spoke about is blended finance. Those are some of the instruments that I think should be used, and also what Dr. Denise talked about of the guarantee fund. Other instruments that have been used in other parts of the world is credit reporting system. Because we are saying that many banks want collateral fixed assets, but many small-scale farmers may not have the fixed assets. So the question is, how do we collateralize non-fixed assets? And the instruments that are listed, the credit reporting systems, secured lending, factoring, and SAFIN blended finance instruments are some of the tools that are being used across the globe and gaining traction. They've been used in China, in South America, with a lot of benefits that have accrued to farmers. In my detailed presentation, which I think will be availed, I'll try to elaborate some of these instruments. So these are examples of the instruments. Then this is the aspect to say, as we move forward, we need to build capacity of the farmers. We need to build capacity of the financial institutions for them to work together. So in brief, The Alliance for Action that ITC is implementing is addressing all the nodes of the value chain, including finance. But the finance for coffee, the finance for snap peas, which is only 8 months, is different. But for banks to make that decision, they need information. So by the research and publication of investment prospectus, we think we can bridge that gap. And we are also working on strengthening cooperatives, revolving funds, etc., so that we can strengthen the participation of coffee farmers so that we can contribute to development. And finally, I want to say our governments have a role to play. Development across the world, I've been reading economic history. All the big economic powerhouses of today in Europe and across the world, they've grown at the back of government support. And I still believe that the government may not be in business to compete with the private sector, but they are in business to provide the guarantee for the facility as articulated by Dr. Dennis, and also facilitating finance either through development banks. I want to thank IACO, and I want to thank all the stakeholders present. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nicholas Amadugwe. That is very enlightening, and very glad to see that that support to ACRAM is making a big difference. And I know that this the partnership between IACO itself and ACRAM in addressing some of those issues. So thank you very much for that presentation. We'll have questions will be addressed to you after we have heard from all panelists. So next, I would like to invite Madame Nancy Cheriot, who will be our last panelist for the session, and then we shall go into discussion. Madame Nancy Cheriot is the managing trustee of Commodities Fund of Kenya, and this fund was set up by the government of Kenya in 2006. It is charged with providing affordable and accessible credit to farmers and players along the crops value chain. The key commodity funded by this fund is coffee, and it has seen over 600,000 smallholder coffee farmers benefiting from this fund. Madame Nancy graduated with a Bachelor of Economics and Sociology from the University of Nairobi, and she also has an MBA in Finance from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. She's also a qualified Chartered Certified Accountant, SCCA. She has over 18 years of experience in financial management, the last 9 of which she has been the managing trustee, CEO of the Commodity Fund. Madame Nancy also has experience in financial management, microcredit management, market development, policy formulation, and strategic planning. I won't go too much into Madame Nancy's credentials, otherwise I'll take up her time of making the presentation. And Dr. Abraham is taking note to make sure that you don't exceed the 10 minutes that you are given. So you have the floor, Madame Nancy.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Karuma and my fellow panelists. I won't take much time. I think a lot has been shared, so I'll just stick to a few slides. I want to share the Kenyan experience. A lot here has been discussed about how to provide financing and what the governments can do. But I want to share what Kenya has done. I think we are among the few countries which has provided financing for the sector. So my presentation, really go to the second one, is sharing what are the features of our fund and what have we succeeded or not? Has it impacted the sector? So that for those of us who are planning to develop a financing for the sector, you can learn from us and avoid some of the pitfalls that we have gone through. From my profile, you learned that I'm in charge of Commodities Fund, which was set up in 2006. Now, 2006 was the time after the liberalization of the coffee sector in the world, and there was a lot of confusion. Farmers were crying out to government. They couldn't access credit from the mainstream financial institutions, and they wanted funding, etc., etc. So the government set up Commodities Fund. By then it was called Coffee Development Fund. It was mainly for coffee. And it started supporting the subsector. Just go back the one slide. And I want to discuss mainly what are the key features of this coffee funding or the Commodities Fund. Number one, it is subsidized, very subsidized indeed. We charge loans 5%, 3%, and some maybe for the very long term for infrastructure, we charge at 10%, but mostly it's 3%. So because government thought smallholder farmers could not access mainstream financial institutions because of the high interest rates and the like. So the government subsidized this very highly. It is very dedicated, very specific. So when we say Commodities Fund, they are very specific to those commodities. It is very flexible because the government tried to find out, they talked to the bank, why are you not lending to coffee farmers? And the bank said, look, the coffee farming is unpredictable. Sometimes there will be very low prices, price fluctuations, or there'll be drought in the year and the farmer cannot be able to pay. So the fund is designed to be very flexible. For example, if this year I financed a cooperative, for example, and during the year we have a very severe drought and farmers are not able to make that payment, the Commodities Fund is very flexible because we live in the same country as the farmers. So we will be able to know there was an issue and we'll be able to extend the period of payment. It is also very government-led, which means 90% of the funds we are using come from the government. We target the smallholder mainly. So you find that though we are supposed to support the whole value chain up to the market, the government is really looking at the numbers. I think it is no secret that governments would want to say, we have supported 1 million farmers, even if it's half an acre, as opposed to we have supported 3 farmers with 1 million acres, if you get what I mean. So we are pushed to target towards the very small holder, the very small ones, so that we can reach as many numbers as possible. Let's go to the next slide. So having understood how the fund is, what was the objective of the funding? We wanted to increase production and productivity. Kenya in the 80s and early 90s, even up to the late 90s, was producing over 120,000 metric tons of coffee. With liberalization and the issues that came after, and other factors, of course, outside, we came down to 50 at around 2006 when the fund was being set up. We were doing 50,000 metric tons. That is way, way low below what we were producing before then. So the aim of the fund was to see how we can spur back production and productivity. We wanted to also support farmers. We said by subsidizing the fund, therefore the cost of funding would not eat into their earnings. Therefore they'll experience increased earnings, which then translate to improved standards of living, employment creation, and of course, the foreign exchange for the government. Let's go to the next slide. So now what has happened? This is from 2007 to date is it, how many years there? It's slightly over 10 years. Please go back just slightly. Yeah, that one. What has happened to the production, the objectives that were set? Unfortunately, this has remained between 40 and 50,000. So it has not affected production and productivity at all. No significant improvement of the standards of living or earnings. Farmers still experience very low income from their coffees in the midst of ever-increasing cost of production. When it comes to employment creation, that one again, we missed the target. Some farmers are replacing their coffees with other enterprises. Others are just abandoning it. And that one, apart from financing, there are other factors that has affected that one. And of course, the foreign exchange, if the production is low, so the foreign exchange is still low as well. So let's go to the next slide. So what went wrong then? Most of the countries are saying if we only provided financing for the coffee farmers, we will do a lot. But from our experience, it seems like nothing much has changed, despite dispersing over 5 billion Kenya shillings to the industry for the last 10 years. Nothing has really changed in terms of production, productivity, and the like. So what went wrong? And when I was looking at this, I realized the problem lies in our policy framework. In Kenya, we have a very long value chain, and from each value chain, there are a lot of deductions from the farmer's income. The market structure, again, is not very, very responsive, and therefore, a lot of farmers have abandoned the crop because they feel that they'll not get value in the market. We have also a very big issue on research and extension. Just like Dr. Denis talked about Cote d'Ivoire, no extension, it's the same in Kenya. Somehow along the way, extension dropped out, and we no longer have extension officers visiting the farmers and the like. And even more so, in Kenya, there were some agricultural policy reforms that happened in 2013-14 that affected even the funding of the coffee research. The coffee research was lumped together with all other researches, and it lost out along the way. So that has affected the coffee sector very much. We also over-depend on the smallholder. Remember, I told you 70% of our funding go to the smallholder. Now, these smallholders are really, really, really small. And when we channel these funds to the smallholder, very little is left for the large estates, which could even improve more on coffee productivity. They would bring in more because they have more stake in it. And then we also over-rely on the export market. That cannot be overemphasized more than what the early morning panel did. We don't consume our own coffee. In fact, in Kenya, it's just a few years ago that now we've started reforms on even the co-ops could not access their own coffee. It was in the policy. It was in the coffee rules. It was illegal for you to roast your own coffee. And I think that is what we are looking now. Let's go to the next. So what can be done? In Kenya, we are now at that discussion level. There are a lot of discussion about coffee sector, the industry, the policies, and we are asking ourselves, should we go full or partial market liberalization? And we are looking at the examples of Uganda. We're looking at which is full liberalization. Then you come to Ethiopia, we have something that is like hybrid. And we are Kenya, where we are very little liberalization as well. So we are looking at our internal market and trying to come up with policies that would open up for better management of the sector. We also looking at financing the research. We have a policy coming up where we are now pulling the coffee research out of the big research organization so that it can be independent and it can serve the coffee sector independently. We also, remember, we have what we call AFA, Agriculture and Food Authority, which meant all the boards that regulated the crops, different crops were lumped together. We also now, Kenya is looking at the independence of coffee board. We are bringing back the coffee board because we realized the policy interventions that we did in the past was counterproductive. Next. So in conclusion, we have realized that financing alone is not a magic bullet. We thought in 2007, 2008, we were really, really excited that now we have financing, we shall go back to 130,000 metric tons. However, we have realized that just like the other panelists have said, we need an enabling environment, we need research, we need co-ops that are very well structured and strong. All that can only work to enhance financing. But financing alone, forgetting all the others, I think this is what the panelists, Denis, talked about, the preconditions. Kenya, we were not very good at looking at what were the preconditions for financing, and that is very, very important. Before we jump in as other countries to financing, let's do well the first part. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cheriot, for that presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, as you have heard from our distinguished panelists, they've covered different aspects of financing. And I know that there are some questions that have arisen in your minds, and perhaps we can have a few people asking questions. The microphones have been put up. There's one on this side and another on this side. So you can stand up and go to the microphone and ask your question. And we'll indicate which panelist you would like to respond to your question. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Amir Hamza, Managing Director of Global East Africa. We don't sell coffee, but we attract investment in the coffee. And the way we do it is through attracting different investors depending on how much they have or anything. For example, we attracted funds so that we leverage it to attract different people in various value chain. For example, the funds we are going to use, we are going to, for example, attract different coffee people in the coffee sector to buy coffee roasters at the lowest interest rate, using banks, partnering with banks, because the bank will ask you how much, for example, they will ask the company how much do they have, the balance sheet, everything. But for us, we were able to negotiate with the bank so that the machine can be a guarantee alone. Then they ask you, where would the market be? So we partnered with one company that has more than 70,000 clients in the database. So then they will be able to buy coffee roasters and at the same time have the market. And again, we go to the farmers, cooperatives. What we did, we don't want to give the money to cooperatives, but we want them to join the banks and be able to be reliable. So the way we do it is by saying we have a customer for the cooperative, and then at the same time, we take that cooperative to the bank to receive the lowest interest rate. So instead of, for example, the company to pay advance to the cooperatives work hard because they know they have a loan and they produce quality. Then the farmer, the customer who buy that coffee, will be able to buy a good quality coffee. Because the only way we assure, again, the customer is attracting international companies. Again, we partnered with another company that has more than...
Mr. Nyonzima, I wanted to know whether you're asking a question, yes, or you are making a contribution.
Yes, I want to know...
And also who your question is targeted to.
Yeah, the banks, BRD. I want to know, how do you, again, facilitate people who are in that sector? Because we facilitate the whole value chain without being involved in sales. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nyonzima. Any other question? Yes, you can go to the... It's okay, you can take off your mask so that we can hear you clearly.
So I want to start by maybe helping Mr. Newsman, I think that's his name, as a banker, and also maybe ask a question to Denny, my good friend as well, on the presentation that he made. And I think Mr. Mutemwa, he also made some comments, part of which I missed. So really to start with, as bankers, we're not looking for guarantees as a counterpart to be able to provide you with a facility. What we're looking for is your ability to repay. And I think that's very critical. In the first instance, we agree, at Frexim Bank, we agree that there is a need to finance the sector. We are very much in sync with the concerns that you've raised. But the issue is, we need to make the projects bankable. And that for us is quite key. So the issue is, and this moves me to the question that I want to ask to Denny, is what are you doing in your capacity at the ICO to say, let us put in place the right structures? Because at the bank, when we hear that there is a structured trade initiative or facility, then it gets us very excited to say, these are our producers, these are the off-takers, these are the outreach or extension schemes in place to ensure that, the whole circle is working as it should work. These are the industrialists or the manufacturing companies that are taking, the products, and this is the entire circle, and this is how it's liquidated, and this is how the bank is going to get paid. And we need that. So my question to you, therefore, is, in terms of capacity building, in terms of setting up those structures, what are you actually doing at the ICO? Thank you.
Thank you, Abba. Okay. Maybe we start with those two. I'll ask Jean-Claude to start with the first one, and then Denis will deal with the second one. Was Enosh putting up his hand? Okay.
Thank you very much. I hope I have understood your question very well. In terms of what BRD is doing to facilitate across. So, as I said, we actually have been very supportive. We started funding the coffee sector right from the beginning, and we see, as I was saying, as we continue to finance the sector and assessing and try to identify some sort of challenges and risks that are within the sector in terms of financing, we started seeing other banks also joining and the financing. And that's one of our role, to make sure that whenever we see there is a gap in terms of financing, we try to take a lead and the lead, and also try to bring on board other also financial institutions to support. So I think that was the first important contribution that we did. And then by the time we saw that now the commercial banks can also contribute in financing the sector, we also started now assessing the value chain. So we told ourselves that we need to also now to change the approach, not only production and processing, but also see the whole value chain as in terms of financing perspective. So with the support of the government, government has put in place a fund that is supposed to actually support the export. So we started. Now we have different windows that we have structured to make sure that we support the coffee farmers, because some of the needs actually from the farmers are not necessarily, they don't necessarily need to have debt component. Probably there's another type of funding that should be considered. So that's what we are doing. As I explained earlier, we have different windows that we are using to support the coffee businesses, including also farmers, where we have investment catalyst, where we make sure that if there's an investment, it's a startup or expansion or anything else, so we provide an interest subsidy to try to reduce the cost of funding, which actually most of the panelists has actually mentioned. But again, as I said, there is debt is not only the right actual funding. In some of instances, so we have a grant, matching grant, that we are using to support the farmers to access the market. But again, we are doing this because we were trying to actually to continue making the sector more attractive to the commercial bank. By the time we are supporting the farmers to access the market, actually that's also going to allow them to access premium market, to have premium prices on the market, to have their own contract directly to the consumers instead of going through the intermediaries. And by doing that, we're actually creating capacity. We are actually de-risking or improving the sector for also commercial bank to continue funding the sector. So there is also a component of guarantee, which also we are working on to make sure, even though we have some credit guarantee that are already in existence that are supporting the financing, the farmers through commercial banks. We have like BDF, which we can also mention. But also there's another guarantee that we are working on to set up, which is also going to support now exclusively the exporters on top of what we already have that is supporting horticulture sector. So we have in the next year, around the second quarter, we'll be able to also to provide that credit guarantee, which is also going to support or to boost or to stimulate the financial institution to lend to the coffee farmers.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. From what Mr. Nyonzima said, it looks like there's probably scope of partnership between what they're doing and what the Rwanda Development Bank does. I don't know. Perhaps it would be a good idea. I think he's located here in Kigali, also in Kigali. I think it would be a good idea to see how that partnership can be developed further so that especially when he talks of supporting the roasters, local roasters here and promoting domestic consumption, that's something that IACO is very interested in, to see the increase in the consumption of coffee locally. I think let's go to Dr. Sejier's response to the issue that was raised by Mr. Abba.
Thank you, moderator. Yes, I'm going to address the question from my friend Abba from Afrexim Bank. First of all, just you have to know that the International Coffee Organization is a platform where different stakeholders meet to discuss the issue concerning coffee sector. We, as an international organization, as a neutral body, we mobilize resources from various partners to address the issues identified. Let me give you two main examples. When following the liberalization of many coffee sector marketing system in many countries, we carried out a study to see what are the weakness of this system. So we, in the marketing infrastructure, for instance, we noted that after the liberalization, all the local business people were victim of the high competition from overseas traders, because overseas traders can access easily to finance at a low cost, as Mzee mentioned this morning. And also, the marketing structure in the country was challenging. So we came up with a system called a warehousing system, which is a kind of a structural finance, trade finance. So we, as a pilot, when we mobilize the resources from partners, As a pilot, we selected a few countries, Uganda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe, to see whether by building a warehouse that will be used as a collateral for a local businessman to get finance in order to continue providing collecting coffee and until exporting. So this system was tried in many countries. I think some countries like Uganda, I think they did succeed. But the idea behind the all intervention of ICO is that as a pilot, and after that, the government or the country will take over and expand it and make it sustainable. So this is where the ICO can play a role by mobilizing all the resources. The second example is how a small-scale farmer can access finance. This is not obvious. If it is not subsidy, I don't think a small scale with a 1 bag, a 2 bag in my village can access finance from the bank. So the first thing is how to model, how to design a proper finance system, loan credit system to this kind of a farmer for them to be able to access the bank. But this also was a serious issue identified within the ICO, and then we also mobilize resources to help country. Now we have a new challenges adding to the existing one. So discussion is still going on to see how best the ICO can help. And this private-public partnership the ICO is insisting on, and in order to see together how can we help and how can the system can be improved, the marketing system. Because if the coffee sector in Africa or in other producing countries, if the coffee sector is viable, the industry also will be viable. But if one side is still keep losing, then I think it's also a threat for the sustainability of the industry. So this is in mind that why the private-public sector is a good strategy that the ICO is now moving on. So for the interest of time, I cannot give you more example, but the critical one is the one we are trying to do with you, AfriCIMBank, through African Coffee Facility, in order to help us, to help the coffee sector, you as a banking institution, how to mobilize the other bank in order to address those issues in a more sustainable way, not a subsidy, because subsidy is not sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Denis. You know, this whole thing, I have heard so much about subsidy here. One thing we have got to take note of is our respective governments are signatories to various protocols, WTO and so on. And the use of the word subsidy, we have to be very careful. It's not that Europeans don't subsidize their farmers. They do in certain ways. But there is a way in which support is provided, and we don't just have to say people are waiting for a subsidy. But this is something which is a challenge. How do we, Jean-Claude, you talked about the interest subsidy that you offer to make sure that farmers can be competitive. How do you see that in terms of compliance with any specific protocols that you might be found to be in? Is there any risk of being found in breach of any protocol by using the word subsidy, or what other terminology can be used there? Because it's a fact that we have distorted systems, that the inefficiencies in our financial structures make it difficult for some of our financial institutions to operate efficiently, and therefore the farmers end up being penalized with very high
interest rates. How do we overcome this, especially the use of the word subsidy, and make sure that we have a competitive system?
Yeah, I don't think we are actually facing any challenge so far. And probably I just want to mention the reason why we are using that approach. As I said, actually, the sector is not, in general, which coffee and also agriculture in general is not too much or very welcomed or attractive to commercial banks. So we try to see what incentives can we provide to push the exporters or the farmers to invest more, to increase the productivity and so on. But actually, this is like a starting point. We are pushing them to grow, to support them at the first step and second step probably, but the third step, we expect them to be mature enough to access the financing. And another thing that I've seen, whenever you have those challenges are being addressed or you are supporting the sector, when it becomes more attractive, then there's a competition within the industry, which also contributes to reduce the cost of funding.
Thank you. We'll have two questions. There's Enosh, and there's three with Haj Amir. He had requested flow first, then followed by you, and then Amir. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to have my comments. I first want to thank the panelists for the very detailed presentations which we have received. My comment is on, to start with what you have just said about subsidies. Maybe we can look for, it's a question of language. We can talk about maybe, incentive programs, because the word subsidy, when we discuss it in Nairobi, it doesn't sell all the time. It's in the international circle. So we can use other terms like farmer support programs, which may be in the form of inputs or spraying chemicals. So without necessarily calling them subsidies, we can channel the same support to farmers and we avoid the term subsidies. Number two, Chair, is on financing of the youth. We discuss a lot about the absence of youth in the coffee value chains in Kenya and maybe in the entire member countries, but I didn't hear enough of programs targeted at financing the youth. Because without supporting the youth, then we may not get them on board in terms of financing their trainings, financing their acquisition of processing technologies, financing their roasting facilities. I didn't hear much of those packages. Lastly, Chair, is the issue of financing our local coffee investors. In Kenya, the coffee auction is controlled by about 5 multinationals who buy 80% of Kenya coffee. Now, our local coffee exporters are able to get markets in the exhibitions in the US, in Germany, but they don't have the financial mass.
Arthur.
Arthur. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Facilitator. I was observing all the presenters there and the financiers, also very nice questions by our friend from Afri-Exim. I was just thinking of, because today our main theme was value addition and local coffee consumption. And from this point of view, if you look at the financing institutions and with African Continental Free Trade Area, that African countries will be trading within the all 52 countries. Do we think that the small-scale financing of just giving people barcodes and brands or maybe small roasters will encourage or will help in mass coffee consumptions locally in Africa? Or do we need to have those projects with economies of scale whereby there is enough financing and that finance is affordable, but on the other side, it is attainable. You find the requirements by the financing institutions are as per requirements of some countries which had set up those requirements upon us. Because if you go to European Union today, you find companies being financed at 0% interest coming to invest in Africa, or at 0% investment, I mean 0% interest for those companies exporting from European Union to African continent, other areas. Our financial institutions have never thought of doing that type of finance, of saying, okay, our exporters can be given a soft loan, maybe a grant to export in that form of finance, which will be affordable and easily accessible. Because when you go to our financial institutions, you find that requirements for assessing the finance to say your project is bankable project. When you come to a project like ours, when you do value addition, and then you have to compete with international value adders coming from outside who are getting finance at a cheap, maybe I can say in another language, they are being subsidized by their governments maybe, at a cheaper finance. So do we have our financial institutions, the large ones, the continental bankers, all the individual banking financiers in each and every country to look into this, or do they have the thought of financing this type of big projects, economies of scale, doing economies of scale with that type of finance so that we can compete, the African local investors can compete into international market? And do they have a system whereby they can even finance the marketing of those companies that you are now going to compete with multinationals? You got certain amount for marketing and also for operating expenditures for certain years before you can compete with those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hamza. I think we'll now have responses from the panelists, and then I'll bring this to a close because we need to get ready to go for the lunch break, and then there are other meetings that will follow after. But I will try to summarize some of these things that have been raised. And I want Mr. Madugwe to get ready to answer some of the questions, especially the question to do with the youth, support for the youth entrepreneurs across the continent. Since that ITC project is covering many countries in the region, maybe it would be interesting to know if there's any component in that project to support young entrepreneurs in coffee, and how can that be probably scaled up to cover the rest of the countries? There was, is Mr. Mondugwe still with us? Okay.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. There was that question. I don't know whether there is any other question that you have interest in to respond to. But there is also the issue of how technology can be leveraged to capture, the granular data. And from the experience of ITC and your personal years of experience, what could you share with us in terms of how we can we can use the technology to capture that data, because now data is a critical thing for us today in resolving many issues.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator. I will respond first to the questions that you have summarized. The first one pertains to the participation of youth in the project that we are implementing, funded by the European Union and ACP in partnership with ACRAM. We have a work stream to improve the participation of youth in the entire value chain. That is from nurseries to the market. And right now, as I'm sitting in Yaoundé in Cameroon, they have a program which they call New Generation, where youth are participating in the production of coffee. We visited the plantations, and even the performance of those plantations compared to the traditional plantations, we can actually see that productivity is higher, like at fourfold, where someone harvests like 300 kgs per hectare. The estimate is that these guys will be yielding maybe 1,000 kgs up to 1,500, and these are dominated by the youth. And this concept, we are taking it to the other 3 countries that we are working in: Liberia, Ghana, and DRC. The second aspect, I want to respond to the question that was raised by Africa Exim Bank to say we want a structure. So during my presentation, I informed you about the holistic approach that we are doing. And that holistic approach is creating an alliance of partners that are able to represent a structure that can be financed and then respond by repaying back. I have an example of another project that we are working on outside coffee in Zimbabwe, where we have structured what we call lead farmers and smallholder farmers in horticulture, whereby 600 smallholder farmers are linked to 5 lead firms or farmers. Within the first season, about 50 smallholder farmers using their own resources have been able to produce and to export through lead farmers. And they've shown that commitment, and those that have committed in the second cycle are going to benefit from the microfinance. We've realized that at times when you put money in front, you attract everybody. So we've looked at those who are committed to use their own small resource, and then we match up in the second cycle. So in the second cycle, we are going to increase their acreage because we are going to give them resources. So that's one structure that I'm giving as an example. The other structure, like the new generation here in Cameroon, is well structured from the beginning to the end. There are people who are working on nurseries, who are working in plantations, then send out for post-harvest processing, and they are anchor buyers. So there's an assurance that if you produce 1,000 kilograms of coffee, give and take, 90% of that coffee will be of high quality. So with that kind of a structure, in my view, this can be attractive to Africa Exim Bank. And we are multiplying this concept into other countries. Then lastly, on the issue of the big data, capturing data, this is an area that we are investigating. You recall in my presentation, I talked about credit registers, which can be used as collateral. But for us to have credit registers, we should have a system of capturing data. For example, if we look at the use of M-Pesa and say all people should use M-Pesa when they are making all their payments. You know, when you are low on credit, you can borrow. How many people borrow and then repay back? How many people are paying their dues to the municipality on time? How many people are paying school fees on time? All those factors, if you capture, you'll be able now to separate people who have the capacity to repay a loan and those who would not. So big data is critical. It is an area as ITC Alliances for Action we are working on. So our approach is holistic to link to what Nancy said, where he said in Kenya we thought with finance everything will be resolved. It is not finance only. There are all aspects that are critical, that have to be supported. So our approach, Alliance for Action, working with ACRAM, working with CIC in Cameroon, with Farmers Union Network in Liberia, with ONAPAC in DRC, and Coffee Federation in Ghana, is to try to structure a system that delivers results, to structure a system whereby at every node of the value chain, we know the business case and the net benefit that is associated with that segment. Because beyond the project, these people should be sustainable. So we should have a system that ensures we capture the data and we take mitigation measures to ensure that post the project, there is sustainability. Those operating nurseries, they will continue to run nurseries and make a living. Those who are running plantations, they will continue running them and making a living. Those who are running washing stations, they will continue running them and make a living. So we are developing a financial appraisal system that captures all that to ensure that at the end of the project, these people have resources to go forward in partnership with commercial banks and in partnership with permanent buyers or sustainable buyers. The other thing that we have not talked about in my presentation is that we are looking at the use of traceability, especially for our high quality producers. We want to know from the farm until the bean, the coffee is roasted and the cup is consumed in any part of the world, who is the farmer or which cooperative has produced that. Then we are also looking at climate smart approaches of enhancing productivity using dynamic agroforestry to ensure that we mitigate against climate change. So I would say these are some of my contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudugwe. I think at this point, I will ask each of the panelists here to give us some closing remarks. I take that, that's what we have received from Mr. Mudugwe, so I won't ask him to say anything more because I want the panelists to give us some closing remarks, and then I'll ask the Secretary General to come and close this as we go for lunch. So I'll start with the ladies first. Madam, there was the issue of, the youth involvement, the financing for the local coffee investors and so forth. That commodity fund of yours, is there a scope that you might be able to address some of these issues that have been raised, and any other closing remarks you have?
Thank you, Ambassador Karuma. Yes, in Commodities Fund, we really strive to also reach not only the youth, but also women in coffee, because those are some of the people that are left out when we talk about financing. The main challenge has been access to collateral. In African continent, I know I speak for everybody, the collateral belongs to the husband. So you find a woman could be in coffee, they want to come for coffee, for a financing, but they don't have any collateral for the financing. And we are yet to develop very strong systems of warehouse receipting products like what we talked about. So what we are doing now, as I told you, in Kenya, there is a lot of conversation about policy reviews here and there. And one key that I'm really waiting for it to be implemented is the use of what we call direct settlement scheme, where we are saying that all coffee sold in Kenya, whether sold to another Kenyan or sold to outside through the exchange or direct, they will all the money will be deposited in one account where then all deductions will be made right there and then. So what does that do to a financier like me? It means that now I can make my claim at that account and say, I financed this farmer $1,000, and it will be deducted directly at that point. So we are now not going to need any collateral from anyone. So women and youth can easily access financing from then on. So until then, we are trying with the little we have to see that they access financing, but it's very hard when the issues of collateral arise. For my closing remarks, I would like to say that I won't overemphasize enough that financing, yes, is very important. But if other sectors are ailing, if there is no research, if there is no extension, if the policy framework is weak or is not working, then even finance, what we left with as financiers is a very bad loan book. So let us also, as we plan to do financing, let us make sure the environment is good for it, that the policies are right, that everybody is protected, and everybody then can access the financing, because even the financiers, they are not telling you that they are in business. We are in business to make money. So if we are not getting money, then we'll move out of the sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Nancy. Dr. Sedia, there was this issue that Mr. Amir Hamza talked about, the large-scale versus small-scale operators. You are talking of promoting consumption and so on. What is the scope for supporting both the small and the large-scale operators in terms of making Africa's coffee competitive against the international players?
Thank you, moderator. I think reacting to Mze's comment, I think my suggestion is just to say that it all depends on enabling environment, policy environment. If the leadership in Africa, if they are convinced that we need processing our commodities, we need to increase consumption, we need to create business people, the SMEs, I think they have to create enabling environment. If, as Mze just mentioned, if the cost of a loan, the credit cost is higher, and we know it is higher, but if the leadership think that it is our goal, where Africa coffee sector will be in 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time, as the declaration of UN say, the Africa we want, Agenda 2063. But if there is no policy to assist this entrepreneur, I think it will be just a word. Let me give an example. If we consider that processing our commodities is important, the interest rate will be different from the central bank point of view. And that will come from the government. But if SME in coffee has to pay 20% interest, I don't think we will get even this Africa we want in 2063. This is to summarize is we need to push. It's not a subsidy, but we need to push because it is our goal that how to get there is how to assist our entrepreneurs. Many countries have done that, even Brazil. The loan for investment in coffee sector, the interest rate is different. But here in our continent, the interest rate is the same like building a house. So we cannot achieve this Africa industrialized in 2063. The second comment I would like to make as my closing remark is about the youth. We always say that we need to involve youth in the coffee sector. I think in the processing, that value chain aspect, that is possible. But in production area, where youth is very important, but there is no tools to get the youth. If coffee farming is still a subsistence farming, I don't think the youth who have seen their grandparents, their parents suffering in the bush with machetes, always, I don't think the youth will prefer that than just driving a motorbike in the city. So we had to see where possible we can mechanize to reduce the work of a coffee farmer. But in the same time, the value chain, yes, there is a big vacuum that the youth can be considered. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Denis. As I said, the terminology here is very sensitive when you talk of subsidies and so forth, and especially when you have some of the development partners involved in the room, discussions and so forth. I remember about 20 years or so, we were having a project with USAID, and then we were talking about, some lobbying, there was a need to do lobbying, this and that, and they said, absolutely no, don't use such terminology. If you want, put there policy dialogue. Policy dialogue. I said, aha. So now when we talk of support to our farmers and entrepreneurs and so forth, since the Honorable Minister of State is here, maybe we can look at options of using terminology like, addressing those SDGs. There are SDGs that address specific areas. And we can talk of enhancement of our people in terms of achieving the objectives of specific SDGs. And that is an investment by the government. So it will be a government investment in supporting our people without necessarily using the word subsidy. Because even our people, our friends abroad there, you'll find a British delegation that comes, and the British government has paid their costs and so forth. They don't call it a subsidy. They have some other technology. It's called cooperation. So whether it is France or Germany or US or something, they have some support, which they say cooperation something. Why don't we also have our government structure some of these things that help our sectors, especially the coffee sector, to become more competitive? I want to ask our last panelist to summarize his points, and then I'll invite the Secretary General to lead us on with the.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Just to mention two things. I think financing coffee sector, I'm not saying it is not bad. It is in a good way. So probably we need to see or to assess it in a value chain perspective to understand if we're talking of youth, where do you see youth support, contributing to the sector? If we are talking of processing technology, which technology can we use to make sure that we increase our quality and also have a very competitive product on the market? If we talk of accessing market using the different framework that are available, how can we do it? So I think if we go by that way, it will be easier for people to understand where the challenges are and what we can do to make it to address them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean-Claude. I want to invite the Secretary General to come, and then after that, the MC will give us any further instructions. So maybe for us, we can go and take our seats.
Let's give a hand of applause to our panelists.
Yes, thank you very much, delegates. Thank you for the very enriching and stimulating discussion. My role, I know we're all hungry, getting ready for lunch. I'm just going to give you a summary of what was discussed this morning in the panel 1 and panel 2. Yeah, I'll summarize what transpired this morning. This has been very stimulating, enriching. I hope you have learned quite a bit. This morning, the purpose of this symposium, the theme was strengthening the coffee value chain for sustainable development of the economy and improved living incomes of African producers. I think this was well covered. Yesterday, we had the high-level ministerial policy forum. That's where the ministers covered the issue of policy intervention at the government level. We're privileged this morning. We had the statement from the Minister of State for Agriculture and Animal Resources, and he also shared his view. Panel 1, improve value addition and promote domestic consumption of African coffee. That was chaired by, who was the chairperson? Yes, Dr. Morris. Yes, Dr. Morris. That focused on the value addition. The second panel, which has just left, was chaired by Dr. Fred Karuma. Next slide, please. Now, panel 1, these are some of the discussions that came out that were highlighted, the main challenges. We learned that despite coffee originating from Africa, the source of coffee, Arabica coffee, is the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia. The source of Robusta coffee is the Republic of Uganda. Now, it's unfortunate that even with the source of coffee being Africa, we haven't taken advantage of this. We're still faced with challenges. Production has declined. We still have other restrictions that were highlighted. Of course, the pandemic has also further exacerbated the situation. The challenges have already been highlighted in many of our forums since the last 10 or 12 plus years from the IACO perspective. The question is, what are we doing about these challenges? Are we moving that needle? Are we making progress? One of the recommendations I want us to take from this symposium, and I hope next year when we come back, I would like to get an experience from one of the panelists whether a policy or an intervention that was picked from this symposium has been implemented so that we can measure whether these symposiums have any impact. For the last 9 years, we've been meeting and we want to find out whether we're making progress. So these are some of the recommendations that were highlighted under this panel. The first one, we need to attract the youth in the coffee sector by creating for them an enabling environment and policies and facilities to finance and promote local products. That came out very clearly for both panels. It is critical for the governments to have a comprehensive coffee policy. As I say, this is a partnership between the government and the private sector. So we need a policy on coffee. Government can't fund anything without a policy. The legal framework, I think, was also discussed here. Transformation, promoting the transformation of local value chain, including roasting. Yes, this is also very critical on the side of government because these are some of the inputs that make the cost of producing roasted coffee very expensive. I think Mr. Amir shared the price differential. The coffee coming in from Italy is cheaper than any coffee coming in within sub-Saharan Africa going to Algeria. So that has to be addressed. Empowering farmers to facilitate them to participate in the value addition with the proof of local consumption. Now, I think Dennis mentioned this, getting the youth into farming. My perspective of getting the youth into farming, I think we'll have to start on the downstream side. I think Uganda is looking at an idea of getting the middle class to go into agriculture as a business, and that is acting as a catalyst to get young middle-class Africans to go back to the farm and do coffee farming as a business. So this is something that can be looked into on value addition. Local consumption to improve, there is need to educate actors to improve the quality. Government has to embark on these programs on quality control and the type of coffee that has to be produce the agronomic practices, I think, right from the farm. If the quality has to be good, there is need from the government to create policies and regulations for discouraging the imports of coffee. There was a bit of a reservation, I think, from my friend Marcos on this issue. I think Reyes, Madam Reyes raised it. The perspective we have from IACO is, I think government institutions should start consuming coffee that's made in the country. Under the initiative IACO has started, the DACBA initiative, we have an agreement with Ivory Coast that government institutions should not be buying foreign coffees. Yeah. In fact, if you're working for any state-owned enterprise, you should support the state coffees that are actually manufactured within the country. Yeah, so I think that's where the protection comes in, but other coffees I think are free to be imported in. Yeah. So that was the summary on value addition under panel 1. On panel 2, the challenges highlighted and the recommendations made. Access to finance for production is still a challenge. Processing and marketing is one of the main challenges also. That's at the value addition side. Establishing funding systems for better access of finance. These are challenges that have been highlighted year after year. We always have these challenges. Now, what are the recommendations? What came out from the panel was a creation of a guarantee fund to absorb the market fluctuation shocks and improve local consumption. Mr. Dennis highlighted that this is not enough. There is need for a fund, guarantee fund for loans, not only on market volatility. So that's something that was highlighted on the guarantee of the fund. The other recommendation is investing capital and disengagement of the public sector. Well, this should be a challenge, not a recommendation. Okay, the poor organization of farmers and limited access to input needs to be addressed. Here, we need to organize farmers into farmer groups. If they're even going to get financing, no bank or institution is going to fund somebody with a very small acreage. So it makes sense to organize farmers into groups so that they're able to access funding. This came out. It's always better to know the type of finance, what are the gaps, what are the needs. We need to provide farmers and provide funding that is favorable to them, identify the different needs, and approach the financial institutions to address the issue. The issue of data is very, very important here. Banks want data, and that's why I believe the digitalization of financing, I think it was a gentleman called Arthur who raised the issue of blockchain technologies, where those could be used to collect data, not only for the banks, but also for the fertilizer companies that want to provide inputs. Data from this database from the digitalization. I also wanted to find out whether the banks are working with the telecom companies. Companies like MTN, Airtel have a lot of data on farmers' needs and interests. So I think Alliance for Action mentioned the issue of M-Pesa working together to see whether that database
Recording
could be
in progress.
used. So that is an area that could also be explored. There is need for strong support from the government, the success case of Kenya with this trust fund. We need to learn experiences from those countries that have been successful. The issue of financing research and development, Nancy, I think this is very important. Our research centers need to be funded to be able to procure good equipment for research and development. I think this is very critical on the development of high-yielding, disease-resistant varieties. So financing research. I know banks don't like that kind of financing, but it's important if we're going to improve production and productivity. So this is very important on the research and development. The last one was financing must be combined with other factors. It's not only financing, there are many other factors that come with the success of strengthening the coffee value chain for sustainable development and also improving farmers' livelihood. I think that's it on the summary that we have prepared. I hope everything has been captured. If there's something that's missing, please let us know before we insert this into our final report. So with those few remarks, I wish to once again thank the moderators, the presenters for a very enriching and stimulating discussion, and hope that you enjoyed this symposium. My recommendation as IACO is that next year we have some success stories on some of the policies that have been adopted, that you've picked from here, so that we're able to make some progress. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary General. Now, a couple of announcements. Again, I will repeat a few that I announced earlier and then give you a few new ones. Number one, for COVID testing, for those who need their PCR testing who are traveling tomorrow, buses will be waiting for you here until 4 p.m. They take off from here, from Convention Center at 4 p.m., bring you to the testing venue, then bring you back. Once you get there, you'll be accommodated. You have to pay for your PCR testing, and then you come back. That's for those who are traveling tomorrow. Those who are traveling the day after, which is Friday, tomorrow you will be leaving here. The bus will be leaving here at 5 p.m. You'll have a 1-hour window once you get there to get tested. Over there, you'll be also ushered in, get tested quickly, and you'll get the results fairly quickly, probably the next morning or so, maybe in the same evening. For those who are traveling on Saturday, I've just been told that that is different. You will have to go get tested on Friday on your own at the same venue and pay for your PCR testing. So nothing changes, but when it comes to Saturday, you'll have to go on Friday, but on your own means, obviously. Lunch is taking place at the same restaurant that it did yesterday, which is the Larder at the Radisson Blu, which is right next to here. I'm just going to repeat this in French. Pour ceux qui doivent se faire tester, pour un test PCR, ceux qui voyagent demain, un bus, enfin des bus vous attendront à 15h tout à l'heure et ils seront là jusqu'à 16h. Une fois que vous êtes dans le bus, à 16h, le bus sera parti d'ici. Donc il faut être dans le bus avant 16h, au plus tard. Il vous emmènera à l'endroit où vous allez vous faire tester, en ville, au KCEV. Une fois que vous êtes là, vous vous faites tester, vous revenez. Vous allez payer pour votre test PCR. Ça, c'est pour ceux qui partent demain. Pour ceux qui partent vendredi, les bus vous attendront ici jusqu'à 17h demain, vous emmèneront au même endroit, vous allez vous faire tester et vous payerez encore une fois pour votre test PCR. Vous recevrez les résultats dans des délais assez brefs. Alors, pour ceux qui voyagent samedi, c'est à vous de vous organiser vendredi, vu que la réunion aura pris fin, pour aller vous faire tester au même endroit, à vos frais également. Le lunch va avoir lieu au même endroit, donc c'est-à-dire au restaurant Larder, où on était hier, dans le Radisson Blu, juste à côté d'ici. We're supposed to be back for those who are participating in the Finance Committee, which is a closed-off session. It starts at 3:30. Bon appétit.